was every worst nightmare that a lifter could have. It ended up being double staph infection in each side of my quads. She's like, you have to take this now, and then if swelling doesn't go at least down a little bit in 12 hours, you got to go to the ER. The sport is always going to trump the strength and conditioning. The strength and conditioning should aid in the sport development.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. Ben Pauli back on the podcast. You've been on episodes 207 and 281.
Number 3, baby.
Yep. So what we were going to talk about today was training, some of the programs that you have, the differences amongst clients and so forth. But before we jump into that, I want to know how your last meet went.
Oh God. I was hoping we wouldn't talk about this.
I have to, right?
So this...
let's do this in two sections. The actual meet and then the training for the meet. Okay. Because there's a distinction, right?
This was the biggest distinction I've ever had.
Yes. And I think people need to understand that though.
Yep.
You can have a crappy meet, but the training phase, the training cycle was really, really good.
Yep.
And vice versa. You can have, usually how it works. You can have crappy.
Yeah, the worst training cycle of your life, all PR.
And a good meet. But sometimes people will base their next training phase or the next macro cycle even on how the meet went.
Yep.
And completely disregard how everything getting into the meet could have been right where it should be.
Or have the greatest training cycle of their life, do horrible at the meet, and then change everything up when they didn't need to.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll just go with the meet.
Okay.
Right. And then we'll talk about the training for the meet.
So the meet, it was every worst nightmare that a lifter could have. It was one of those, I was talking to a couple guys that gave them the analogy of like, you ever have that dream where you got to punch somebody, but you just can't hit them hard enough and you're not punching hard enough? It was like that with the weight. It was like, warm-ups, and you go to push into the bar and there's just nothing there. So I was squatting, I'm like, something's weird. I started thinking back. I had this really gnarly, what I thought was just delayed onset muscle soreness in my lateral quads. And my quads, what I thought were just hypertrophying, just giant. It ended up being double staph infection in each side of my quads, laterally. So tracking back to the old wrestling room at Central Michigan, where we used to train our MMA at, as you know, I got staph a million times from there. I'm a MRSA carrier, all that stuff. So if it gets bad, it gets real bad for me. So my legs were swollen. They had no power and my blood pressure was up and down. I didn't know what the hell was going on. Miss all my squats. Luckily, I signed up for bench only as well. So I ended up just staying benching.
So with the squats, what did you do when you noticed it in the warm-up room? Did you change your openers or is there anything you...
No, I just decided I was going to headbutt the fuck out of the bar and just try to open where I was. And I realized that was a stupid plan now.
Yeah.
I moved, I think my last warm-up was 925 and it moved like 105%. It was bad. And I just knew from, so what was really weird about it is we talked about on the last one, kind of how I eccentrically spread the floor on my way down to kind of control. I had no brakes. So I was just bombing and hitting depth. I think I got to full depth in my comp briefs at 2 plates, which is pretty gnarly because those were a souped up pair of briefs. So I knew something was weird. I'm like, man, do I got to mobilize or what the hell's going on here? And then I didn't realize what was going on and my quads were like burning and stuff. Went through the meet, went home, started drinking beers, drinking whiskey, whatever. Woke up the next morning and they were both swollen like 3 inches out to the side. I'm like, shit, I got to go to the hospital. Went in and the lady took one look at it. Well, I horrified the nurse because I set the record for that clinic's blood pressure for the highest. It was like 178 over like 150 or something, completely nuts, to the point where they had 2 more nurses come in to recheck, and then the doctor actually came in and rechecked. And then I told her I was MRSA carrier. She looked, touched my leg, hot to the touch. She's like, we don't have to waste any time doing the blood work. I already know this is staph. They gave me some hardcore antibiotic. They gave me a bunch of like weird creams and ointments for something I didn't even know that was a thing. And then she told me, she's like, you have to take this now. And then if the swelling doesn't go at least down a little bit in 12 hours, you got to go to the ER. So luckily I took it. I took my first dose when I got it and then one that night. And then by the next morning, the quad swelling had gone down. and also my dreams of having giant quads went out the window. So,
well, you kind of saw what it looked like, though.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was like, oh, that's where I can chase. But it was annoying.
How'd the bench go?
The bench went great somehow. I had no power, so opened at 770, I believe it was, and I bring it down. Thought I had the shirt loaded. It was loaded perfectly. I looked at my arch, everything was great, and then it was just 10 out of 10 grinder, and I literally racked it, got the good call, a good lift, and I literally looked at my guys, and I was like, guys, I just was laughing. I'm like, I have nothing. Like, we just got to leave. And then they're like, no, quit being a pussy. Put in the insert. We're going 881. That's what the minimal goal was for this meet. So I'm like, all right. And so there was something good about not having that leg drive that forced me to belly up more. I think I was kind of trying to leg drive my belly into the bar instead of actually bellying in. Something worked. So I hit it on the second attempt, but I got called for a soft elbow on the right. And then we just retook it, jacked the shirt a little bit down closer to the elbow, and then that helped me carry it up to the top. So I got an 881 bench, and then I just shook everybody's hand and just left. I had nothing. I was dead.
That's interesting. Do you think that for the bench, by not having the legs to be able to root like you normally would, that it forced you to have to expand your rib cage even more than normal?
That was what it felt like. I looked at my video, and man, you could have shoved a foam roller under this arch. It was crazy. I don't know if I was just kind of cueing it with trying to almost extend my hip to touch, but it was just kind of like, I literally, for the first time, I kind of pushed just my belly and ribs up, and I had a huge arch. After I settled this thing in, it was like a 2-inch stroke. It's great.
Well, that's a tricky one, because that's one of the things that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to teach them how to bench, is first off, they misinterpret what leg drive is. So that's, the first thing.
Yep.
But I'm trying to tell optimally what I would, in the perfect world, what would happen is we'd have these rib cages that can expand tremendously.
Yep.
So as the bar's coming down, you'd be able to get your rib cage to meet halfway.
Yep.
That would be the optimal thing, trying to get them to expand that rib cage, even if it's raw. It doesn't matter if it's raw or if it's in gear, is one of the trickiest things.
Yeah, and also do it without having them crank the lumbar, so they're screwed for the deadlift or something there too. Yeah.
But what typically happens is you can get them to do that, but as soon as they start driving with their legs, sternum drops.
Yep.
And it's interesting that I know that to do that.
Yeah.
Right. But when you take one element completely out.
Yeah. It's like force yourself into a corner with it.
Which makes you wonder, the value of, for certain people, a floor press.
Yeah.
If, granted, it's arm length, right? But a lot of people, it's really, really close.
Well, actually, this brings up a great point, because going back when I would follow the typical floor press, 2 weeks out kind of circummax thing, I would always tweak shoulders and pop pecs. And looking back at that, it was probably because I couldn't arch really. It was just lumbar and legs.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, that would make sense.
Where I've tried to set it up with some people to where if they expand their rib cage, the bar will touch. Mm-hmm. If they don't expand the rib cage, the bar won't touch.
Yep.
And even using like the safeties on a bench sometimes.
Well, that's
the same thing.
We do. So I'll have my guy. I just literally went over the leg, this exact conversation with one of my high level benchers. He had a reverse micro, and he was collapsing his belly. So we brought him over and we took PVC. We put it on the safeties at what would be like a 1-inch pin press. And I'm like, get tight. And I'm like, you have to push your stomach into that bar and touch it. And then took him a few tries, and he did it. And then I'm like, all right, so when you come down, freeze it at that 1-inch pin. And then now you're trying to ISO hold that and push your belly into it, because he's one of these guys, he's a raw guy. If he comes in, he just sinks and dumps, and then he tries to heave it, and he's so strong he doesn't need to, and he's got a really good arch when he arches right. So I'm like, let's graze that t-shirt. So he comes down, barely lets that thing touch, and then he pressed right out of it. Good for a PR. Done.
It's a huge thing, because if you step back and look at it from a distance, it also changes the position where their elbow is to the bench pad.
Yep.
Where a lot of times it's, hell, Jake out here, who's a WPO lifter, we're working on that, because
7-foot arms. Yeah.
Oh my God. The difference was like his elbow being 2 inches lower than the pad to being 1 inch higher than the pad.
Yep.
And granted, we're talking distance the bar has to travel, but we're also talking shoulder rotation.
Yep.
And
he's dealing with a left shoulder issue probably from that.
Yeah.
And this brings up a good point. So for everybody to understand, Jake is one of my online athletes that moved here, and he now trains with Dave. But this is what's good about the nuance between online coaching and in person. There's just those little intricacies that you cannot, or it's very hard to push that through online.
Well, it's not every rep or every set either. You know, that's the other tricky thing is sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. You know,
it could just be, the way you slept, your upper back's tight, something like that.
A lot of different things, right? And the lifters don't know, right? So that what they may send you might be a good one, because oddly enough, as the weight gets heavier, their form gets better, which drives me fucking crazy, by the way, because the best time to practice it is with the lighter ones.
I'm dealing with that right now on my deadlift, because I'm learning that true sumo that we've talked about a few times, and I figured out the leverage, but it is so hard to replicate without having 85 RPE 8, something like that, plus on the bar, because you have to anchor in so hard to get your leverage. It's the same thing. I can't practice the damn reps. So I figured out, like, I elevate it I go stiff bar from a 2-inch block, and then I just practice leveraging and wedging in. And that seems to be the only viable option for me right now until I really dial it in.
How do you transition because everybody's so concerned about the start of the deadlift, right? But then they end up in a shit position to where they can't finish the deadlift. It's like they're over analyzing the start, but they're not.
And then they miss at the top, and they only want to work their glutes, and they don't want to work the start position.
Yes, but the start position is the reason why they look like shit.
And so then I'm like, okay, so let's load up a hip thruster. They can hip thrust 600 pounds, and I'm like, okay, your glutes are strong. It's not the glutes. It's your position. It's horrible off the floor.
Yeah, but the tricky part, how do you navigate this, is you need a certain amount of load to be able to manage that.
Yep.
You know, because if it's under a 60% load, it's going to be hidden. Yeah. You know, the load's not high enough to be able to really, unless it's really shitty, but it's not high enough to really expose that shitty glute strength.
Yeah.
Which isn't even glute strength, by the way. It's just position.
So what I found over the years is that it has more to do with hamstring length. So what we can envision on the backside of the body when we're deadlifting and trying to set that low back, we have this fight for pelvic position between our spinal erectors and all the muscles in the low back and the lats and the hamstrings. And so when I start to see this, I look at this, and I made some videos on this recently about kind of the hamstrings holding your deadlift hostage. And I get these guys to start to develop a surplus in range of motion to where we could hinge with a flat back neutral spine, or even, the multi-ply guys with an arch if we got a loaded suit. And then I want them to be able to grab the bar, set their lats completely bent over at 90 degrees, and then be able to lock and unlock their knees without a bunch of restriction. Because what we see is, as like you're saying about how we need a certain amount of weight to expose this, is the slack is dependent on the weight that's on the bar. So if we get less slack with heavier weight on the bar, we talked about this last time, how they might pull a little bit of a deficit relative to how their technique is. And that's, we need maximal freedom. These guys don't understand the concept of, like, if we're fighting the external load of a barbell, and then let's say we could punch a muscle biopsy on that hamstring and call it 20 pounds aside, we're adding 40 pounds of external resistance we have to overcome to complete that lift. So I don't want any of those limiting factors to come into play when it comes competition time. So most of the time I see we have a huge hamstring mobility issue. I actually have one guy now that is dealing with a really, really weird compensation. He was the Pro Strongman League World Champ. His name's Jimmy Mitchell, 198 guy. And he has developed, because he just forced his body to deadlift, the way he normally pulls is a flexed lumbar and an extended upper back. And so his leverage is completely all fucked up. And that has been one of the coolest / biggest challenges for me he's been to a million different coaches, really high level deadlift coaches. And we finally cracked the code on it, because we figured out he literally can't segment his spine the right way. He has a very mobile spine, but he has no active control over where it goes. So we had to break it down square one. We had to go through. So I'll put in like a warm up for him, which is, you ever see like the Russian baby makers where they grab the toes and kick the hips to the sky, the Olympic lifters, to stretch the hamstrings? It's just like that, but we're holding onto a barbell and we set our lats, because I want to get them kind of a position akin to how they're going to start a deadlift. And then we start working it from the ground up. So I might have them squat down, get their lats maximally tight. And we might have...
Now, when you say maximally tight, are you talking in the bent position or...
So they're bent over and we're just kind of setting the lats, I would say, right?
Yep.
Just so we have that tension up, that pre-tension we put in the lat. And then I have them
So that's before they actually sit back.
So we might have them start from the bottom or up. It just depends on their hamstring mobility, right? So if we squat them to the bar instead of the lats on a lot of guys because their hamstrings are too tight. And then I'm like, all right, push your ass to the sky and lock your knees out. They can't even get close. They're shaking. And I'm like, do you see how big of a rate limiter this is? And then I say, let's do it in reverse. Lock your knees out and then try to set your lats without bending your knees. And they can't even get close. Their backs this rounded.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, this is how much of a deficiency in this position that you have. So we have to free up the hamstring. And that's been the biggest gainer in the deadlift outside of that, way more than any variation, reverse hyper, rack pull, pin pull, whatever it is getting that start position correct where we're not fighting that hamstring for pelvic position. And then we look down a joint, right? We look at the knee, right? So I started thinking about this in terms of like, if we're abruptly wedging in, and we're immobile, we're either going to use the hamstring to pull our knees over the bar, or we're so tight that we might be even initiating, my theory would be that we might be even initiating like a stretch reflex, right? So then I was kind of looking at it, and these guys would always have shit power off the floor. Even when their shins would be over the bar, we'd work that position. I'm like, you're in position to have good leg drive, but it's not there. And I realized that whole pattern was so detrained that they couldn't shut the hamstring off from the wedge in a short enough time to turn the quads on to produce that force. So that was a really crazy eye opener. And then same thing, as we mobilized that and we got their hamstring stronger, because as you know, usually it's that length goes with the strength. The hamstring's a crazy one in that regard. But we started opening that up, and then they're like, oh my God, my quads are on fire in the setup. And I'm like, okay, we're starting to feel the quads more. And then wouldn't you know it, power from the floor increases times 10.
I want to circle back to something that you talked about, which is a huge thing that gets overlooked a lot, is before you can actually pull the bar, right? The lats need to be packed and the core has to be braced, right? Some people, based upon leverages, are going to have to do that before they even sit back, right? Here's the fucked up thing. The really fucked up thing drives me fucking crazy. They do it while they're standing.
Yeah.
Right. So they're in the standing position before they go down to grab the bar. They brace, they lock their lats, then they bend over. They lose their lats as soon as they grab the bar, and they lose their fucking brace.
Yep.
It's like when they're in that position before they actually drop, to pull their back up. When they're in that bent over position, so the shoulders are in front of the bars at this time, they need to pack the lats and begin to brace.
Yeah.
Right. And then when they shift back and they actually start pulling, it's just bracing more. Everything else should be set.
Well, we see this all the time. So those same types of guys, what's funny about this is they do the social media clout thing, because then they inevitably start pulling beltless because it's less tension, so it frees up their mobility a little bit. And then they put a belt on, they do exponentially worse, because we know when we brace, it changes length tension relationships in the lower half and lats everywhere. Yeah. And so these guys are like, oh, beltless PR. And I'm like, put a belt on. They go backwards 100 pounds because they're so immobile. But that's also another kind of a check that I use for these guys. If they're really immobile, I'm like, put your belt on, and then we'll see how your position changes. It gets worse for some of these guys that are really, really, really immobile. And then stuff like that where, obviously we're going to be training through some of this. We're not just going to stop until it's over. I mean, in a perfect world we could, but nobody wants to wait that long. But some of these guys, we have to use that as an assessment tool. And then it's like, okay, we need to figure out what's going on here so we can stop fighting our own body for this deadlift position.
Well, a lot of times too, you'll see with them when they do bent over rows or chest supported rows, right? And those other things, they're not packing the lats at the start either.
Well, most of these guys, they're getting a Terry's workout. They can't even, there's no, I'm like, if you're starting to row and you hike your scap up, we can't use the lat right. And then they're like, I only get a pump right here in my lat, and I don't get that big meaty pump. It's okay, you're not doing anything right. So then, like we talked about the last one, it's like I had to go back. It's like, all right, we have to coach rows, like every little fine tune, like the upper trap thing being, so overactive in everybody, and they don't understand that they have to practice not activating that trap in every movement. That's half of my day when I'm coaching is just watching rows and warm-ups, and I'm like, pull your scap down. We'll be doing whatever. We'll be doing the lock big three. And these guys are shrugged up doing this. And they're like, I could add weight here. I'm like, you should only use a 2.5 if you're doing it right. That's all.
I want to take a moment to give a shout out to my friends over at Mastodomics. I use their podcast a lot when vetting guests for the Table Talk podcast. I also listen to it a lot just because it cracks me up. Their YouTube channel is great. The podcast is on there, but they also have home gym reviews. Their apparel line is amazing. The standout products for me are these drink spotters. Rarely is it used for holding drinks. We have one on the monolift that holds the collars in between sets, smelling salt, chalk, whatever. You'd be surprised at how much crap you can put into one of these things. Their stall mat coasters they brought out last time they were on the podcast. These things are great. Check out their website, massonomics.com, as well as their podcast and YouTube channel. The way I'll break it down with people is just in rows in general, there's a difference between elbows out and elbows in.
Yep.
You know, one's more upper back, one's going to be more lats, to make it very simplified.
Yep.
But they don't consider that at all. It's just the fucking row.
Yep.
I'm like, well, what is the intent? Right now, the packing the lats is going to be the same on either, right? And the bracing is going to be the same on either. But what's the intent? You know, what are you trying to build? God, we just went down a whole rabbit hole. Let's go back to the training for your meet.
Okay. So, after the meet went to shit, it was awesome because I realized I crossed a nice bridge where, you know, I'm more at peace with the lifting in general. And it's not one of these things where I'm just super pissed off. It was just, all right, we bombed out. We're going to go to the next one. Probably won't be the last one. It is what it is. I had the greatest training cycle of my life. Got in with Mike Skiba and the Covenant Conjugate guys, and man, he's a damn wizard. Perfect example of just a guy that has grown up around the iron. His dad was a badass lifter. He's got a badass gym, and he was just pumping out guys, and they were just exploding in their squat. And then at the time when I wanted to go with them too, I was at this crossroads, which I'm sure you've gotten to before, where you get so analytical as a coach. You just want to be done with analyzing and doing all that. I just wanted to be a lifter. I just wanted to say, aye, aye, Captain, it's on the sheet. It will be done. Send me the best squat. I'm chipping that motherfucker and we're going. That was kind of so high. I got in with those guys, threw me in the group chat, made a lot of friends, love all those guys. He's got a really unique twist on the conjugate system. A lot of max effort waving. He put in a lot more box squats. He does some super conjugate variations. We're talking cambered bar, chains, forward band, box. I love the super conjugate stuff. And he has a really genius way in transforming it. And then what I love about it is he makes you very accountable as an athlete, where it's just kind of a main and a secondary, and then you need to figure out the rest. And you should know that if you're at the point where you're going to hire him in. And I kind of saved him in my back pocket, so to speak, just because I knew when I wanted to make sure I put the finishing touches on this, I was going to go with him just because I liked his style. I liked the whole vibe of their gym, and they're very like-minded, just like my place.
How much of a change was it from what you were doing?
I was kind of riding what we talked about in the last one, kind of like a more optimal approach. And this is kind of wave up, and then we're max effort on this day, strict deloads. And I was kind of going in, just I was over optimaling it and being too cautious and analyzing stuff too much. And I wasn't training maximally where I should have and pushing it. And then at that time too, I had gotten too gear happy and I didn't have my raw base in there how I should have had it. And then looking back now, all my best training cycles, that was a huge prevalent thing. And I try to dive into each cycle. So like if I cycle out of something, I run into this all the time. I just made a post about my volume for my reverse hypers and my inverse curls. And when I had it at peak volume, my deadlift was steadily climbing, and then it stagnated out and my deadlift was stuck. So stuff like that, I always kind of bypass stuff because I'm trying to do my diligence and dive into the next wave, but I don't take enough notes or say, hey, that's a great indicator or a great builder or a great tester for that last cycle.
With the max effort work, what is that? Right, not the movement, but what's the intent?
So the way that he runs it is we do like a 3-week wave. So it's usually a box squat, and then we'll sprinkle in some free squats, and then as we get closer to me, it's all free squatting. I categorize it as an RPE system. I'm pretty sure he hates RPE. I'm not 100% sure, but basically week 1 is like an RPE 8, briefs only, leave 2 jumps in the tank. What's very cool is that across the wave, we increase accommodating resistance. And then so the goal for week 2 is we wear a pair of knee wraps. And then you try to match bar weight. / make it an RPE 9. If you hone in on your numbers, and I'm real good with this portion of the program, then it ends up being right about an RPE 9 with the knee reps to a box. And let's say we would go 120 chain, and then we go 160 chain. Then week 3 would be 200 chain. You're trying to match bar weight all 3 weeks, and then you might have one more in the tank. What I like about it is it gives me a good excuse to leave some in the tank where I need it to build across the wave, and then I go ape shit on that last week. But it's only one max effort, true max effort.
In the 3 weeks.
In the 3 weeks. And then we deload. And then what's great about it is he builds in a straight weight tester day. So we deload, and then we do a straight weight tester, and then we kind of taper off some accommodating resistance to the meet. So we always kind of have a number to match and gauge our progress. And we always have that straight bar free squat in there.
That sounds a little bit close to some of the waves that I'll run with my squat, to where the first week I would basically just call that an accommodation week.
Yeah.
Because it could be a different bar. You got to figure out, because the chains, and right now it's a spider bar with the chains, right? So it's a lot of chain. Where your feet have to be perfect.
Yep.
Right? Or you're going to get...
Well, and you have the angle of the spider bar relative to the swing of the chain.
You got to just figure the shit out, right?
Yep.
You got to figure it out. So it usually would fall around that 8. And then the next week, I auto-regulate the shit out of it, but it's either adding more chain with the same weight, and then more chain with the same weight, kind of go through that way. I just don't do the deloads. I just change the movement, because that next week 1 accommodating may be like the Mars bar, and I haven't used it in 3
Yeah,
months.
and that'll aid to the deload. Well, that's like, it was like the first, I never trained with forward bands, and it was like that first week I'm unracking and just dumping forward. I am hitting the mono and just all kinds.
Yeah, you got to figure it out.
All kinds of stuff, but I love it. Just the leverage changes. It's a lot of upper back, and it's just the max effort is geared towards the squat. And then on the secondary day, he gives you a chance to kind of regulate your own training, but we're always building some deadlifts in there, and it's relatively light volume and kind of tapers up. And sometimes it overlaps with the max effort stuff. Sometimes it's on the deload week kind of a thing. And it's great to see in person, and I respect it from a coach's perspective, because he has, like we talked about the last podcast about me having some cookie cutter programs that led to very big breakthroughs, because you can experiment on a lot of people. He changes it program to program, so it's not all the same stuff that you would think. And that's just him learning and taking feedback from the results of the last cycle. So that's pretty cool to see. And then it always ends up better.
Did you find any of those max effort movements had more correspondence to your squat than others? Because it's always a game of trying to figure out what the builder is, what the tester is.
Well, that's perfect. I had this in my notes as a topic. So this is what was very cool about that. And I had already been using this when I train my athletes. And so kind of what I do is I'll sprinkle in specialty bars, and I know their leverages, and then if that leverage is good or bad for the lifter, it can help us set up future training. And then also, those technical indications on whatever certain bar can also give us some breadcrumbs into what we need to fix for the straight bar squat. So to your question, I was running the safety bar waves, and it was like a reverse mini box squat. And I ran this fucker up to 1055, cooked it. I probably could have went to 11, left it there. But I looked back at my old videos. I think we talked about this a little bit. I was talking about how I could brace and open better with the safety bar. And I started analyzing. I'm like, all right, what's going on here? Dropping my rib cage. I have a better brace. And I'm like, okay. So then I looked back at my squats with the straight bar, and I was holding my rib cage hostage by pinning my shoulder blades back too much. Wouldn't you know it? So I used that little breadcrumb there, and I punched my scaps out, and I'm like, wow, I can bend the fuck out of this bar a lot better. And then I got a way better stack. Squat started flying. So something like that, where, to the naked eye, or to the people that are kind of more specialist or traditional straight bar, is, they would be like, well, how the hell is SSB specific? And, like, to your training. And for me, it was exactly correlative to that. And then also, some stuff you can take that I've done for my lifters is like, okay, this guy's lights out on a Mars bar. It's a super low bar leverage. He squats high bar with a close stance, and then we start tweaking the fine tunes. And it's like, maybe we should go low bar and kind of flare the knees a little bit more. And then once a big squat PR. And then something like that for me, I'm like, oh, maybe I should start sneaking that bar up a little bit more. And then I get a little better high bar position with that wide scap position. And then boom, better brace even.
What about for the bench? How did that change?
So he was already running variations that were very similar to mine. He has a lot of poly guys. So for me, I kind of just stuck with my system. It was basically right there, dead nuts on with him. The poly guys might have a 2-board with some doubled light bands, and I'll bring that to a 1-board just to make it a little harder in the band shirt because you get so much spring out of it. And then the secondary raw stuff is he'll give you some good volume to follow. And most of the time the guys follow that to a T if they're healthy. There's a bunch of us that are dinged up. So I have to do all my own stuff because I have like 2 rotator cuff muscles and half a pec on this shoulder, torn labrum, and then, repaired tricep on this side. So I just kind of figure out my variations. But what was cool about that is me trying to follow that as much as I could. It made me realize that I was not stressing my pec after the injury enough, and I wasn't building the bottom half where I should have built it. And so for me throwing my head against the wall, just trying to stay on program because I just wanted to be able to do what everybody else did, it opened up a whole bunch of stuff that I figured out I need to work on. And then it kind of gave me a way to set up my own training. And now my raw bench is starting to take off. And within the next 6 months, I should be able to start getting into raw bench PR territory.
So how did you manage that? Because it's when you're fucked up beyond repair, right? So when
you think you are, yes.
Well, after enough wear and tear, things are damaged that are just going to stay damaged.
Yep.
Right. So it's there's no magic pill to fix it. So it's fucked up beyond repair, but it doesn't mean that you can't get stronger.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but what happens is
that was my mindset that I was going into with it. It's like there's no way I could build this. And then I finally was like, fuck that. I'm going to figure out a way to, whatever it is, if I have to change my raw bench form, all this stuff. And that's kind of how I went with that.
Yeah. What happens when you're in that stage, though, is you become a master of minimum effective volume.
Yep.
Right? Because too much, and it's just going to aggravate all the shit that's already screwed up.
Exactly.
Not enough, and you're not going to get any stronger. So you find where that gauge is, where what it sounds like you're saying is you had to increase that volume,
definitely,
to be able to build higher capacity, right? Yep. Just joints and so forth. But where people will screw that up is they'll do that at the same RPEs, effort, intensity, however you want to define it.
Yep.
As they're doing with everything else.
And you know this from having an injury like that. The RPE is wildly skewed when you have an injury. It's not even in the realm of accurate.
Yes. So like a 4 is really an 8, on that tissue.
Well, so this brings up another point I had that I wanted to talk about is I started implementing this with my lifters because some of them just weren't pushing it enough and they couldn't establish an RPE. So I would drop a couple of sets of volume out and then I would have them, let's say they were doing a set of 5 at an RPE 7. And then I'd want them to do 6 sets. I would go down to 3 or 4, and then I would do what I call an RPE check set at the end, and I'd have them push it to failure with 2 side spots, even if it's light, just so we could yell at them, and they'd go to failure. And some of these people, they're using a working weight that they think is an RPE 8, and they're getting 15 reps on the last set. And I'm like, okay, this is not even in the realm of so it's like, okay, if that injury is preventing you, that's one thing, but like a lot of these people are healthy and they just need to push it.
Yes.
But like mine, like some of these days, it's just maddening with these injuries. I'm like, all right, I'll bet my good 8 right here. I'm going to pump some sets. And you know how it is, being a weathered lifter, it's like, okay, set 5, you're warmed up. And then I go, I AMRAP set 6, I get 20. I was doing 5s.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a weird ass thing because with my poverty bench right now, whatever my working weight is, the first set might be a single.
Yep.
And then everybody's looking at me like, oh my God. Then the next set's 2, the next set's 3, the next set's 4.
Yeah,
the next set's 5.
Exactly what happens to me.
And then like the final set might be 8.
Yep.
But there's no way in hell I would have been able to do 8 on set 1. No matter how many warm-ups I would have done.
You have to warm up and then you got to gauge it. And then it's like, all right, is this tweaking? And then you got to figure out your setup. One thing I added in was I went back to my old, the Bozu ball stuff that we talked about. And so like a lot of these people don't understand the concept of what happens at the shoulder blade when they're benching, right? So we need adequate shoulder mobility, and then we also need active stability. So some of these people have passive, it's not even passive stability, it's a passive position they put themselves in. So they're really good at dropping their scaps down and bellying up and getting everything in a good position, but they use their setup, the stickiness of the pad and the bar weight to pin them into position. They're not actively pulling themselves into a stable shoulder girdle. And so when I have these people that have shoulder issues and pec issues, I'm like, okay, what type of scap-free pressing are we doing? Are we doing anything overhead plane? Are we doing a push-up? This is what some of the cool stuff is when you look back at like how Louis had stuff in. He was a big push-up guy back in the day for that little bit of time. And it's all very genius, and it wasn't like he was crunching these really deep science level stuff on the exercise selection end maybe, but like it was just in there because it was effective, and they just found that was effective. And the reason why is because we're punching our serratus out and we're pressing with our scaps free, and it allows you to actually stabilize the shoulder girdle. So what we do is we start stabilizing the shoulder girdle. We start doing make sure now that each day they have a scap-free press, meaning we're not going to pin the scap against a pad and leverage our scap into one position. And so a good way to do that, a lot of push-ups, overhead. I like doing a lot of overhead with a neutral grip because it'll force that serratus to activate. Kind of stole some of that from Dr. Locke's thinking on his kind of little angled press there. And then when we transition back, we'll get that Bozu Ball Pro, the big thick one, and then we lay their scaps on it, and now their scaps can move slightly, and then it allows them to press pain-free. I have guys that haven't pressed raw heavy in years, and once they get past the limitations of the stability aspect of the exercise, they can send up heavy weights. I look back at some of my best bench cycle. I benched all on Bozu, peaked it at a 465 triple, and then I close grip 485, and I was at like 240 body weight. My best raw ever. Nothing crazy to write home about, but it was just great progress for me. And it was just, I look back and I couldn't put the concepts together yet. And I didn't know if I would have just had, and then of course, I look back at my strongman training, and I would be training strongman, and then I would just test a bench every like 8 weeks, and it would just skyrocket. And it was because I could hold a 200-pound circus dumbbell like this and just walk with it for 180 feet. It's just more stable.
Mm-hmm. How did your deadlift change then for the meet, the training of that?
So that one, I kind of just regulated on my own. So I was trying to follow a lot of their stuff, and he waves it. He does a lot of waving, like it might be a height, right? So it might be a 2-inch deficit, 1-inch deficit from the floor, something like that. I'm having a really big issue being larger than I have been historically with my conventional pulls and all my rack pulls. They are so far backwards. And then I look back at one of my programs, and I had a lot of good mornings in. So that was another nice little breadcrumb. I need to put those in because that conventional hinge pattern needs to be strong for me in order to progress my sumo. And then of course my reverse hyper and my inverse curl volume. But it was one of those cool things where I was sitting there stressing about my conventional pulling, and it wasn't going anywhere. I just kept tweaking stuff, and it just wasn't worth it. And so I figured out, it's just a mass hinge pattern that I need there. So I put a lot of my own stuff in there. And then what I was doing is I started to, I just kind of ran off on my own for my pulls, and he gave me the freedom to do that because I'm one of the best deadlifters on the team. So he kind of was like, yeah, do whatever you got to do. I started realizing, kind of talking about what we talked about with the deadlift. I realized I wasn't actively pulling my hips in. I had a horrible rib cage position. So what was cool is I always go back and I start working speed deadlifts because I can tweak my form and then still get some good force production. And then just for whatever reason, that whole dynamic concept trains very well for me. So I run some volume, some touch and go, hit some PRs there, maybe beltless, and then I'll wave it in. I did this really cool one that you would probably love. It's on my Instagram. We have our 2 elite collegiate racks side by side, and the mats are way out to the side, encompassing. I put 150-pound dumbbells. I choke a strong band to a light band, and I loop it around the boxes. So the speckle tooth boxes we have. And so what I'll do is I historically hurt my back on my first pull when I'm doing my reps. Once I get rep 1, just like everybody else, it's easier. So me and one of my colleagues, Coach B Rose, he's a partner with me at Coaching Revolution. We have been fascinated with this concept of eccentric neural grooving that, of course, the Russians got on years ago, of how do we kind of biohack into that, that eccentric strength that we get about, our 20% overload we can handle. And they were messing with some stuff with some depth jumps and all kinds of different stuff. And so I was kind of like, how can I put that into a deadlift? It's like, it's like a top down. So what I did is I would do a sumo block pull from like 4 inches, make it an easy leverage, pull the first one, And then the bands would fling the boxes out of the way, and then I would just do a set of like 5, but I would do them dead stop. But just having that eccentric neural groove on the way down for the first one. So I would pull the first one, I would tempo it down, and then I would just reset and wedge aggressive just like I was pulling. And there's something here that's completely nuts because it can open up your reps. Even if it's dead stop, just hacking that first rep, you can add 3-4 reps in a rep PR. It's completely nuts. So I messed with that, and then I jumped in, and I wanted to start pulling with my rib cage down. And as I told you before, my strongmen get wild amounts of carryover out of their suit. And I'm like, all right, I just have to strap up. And so what it helped me do is I started pulling my LUP, and I just started cranking the hell out of the straps. It forced my rib cage down. And then I realized I had I work on my mobility like crazy. And I realized I had a deficit in mobility relative to how I was trying to pull. So freed up the hamstring and stuff. But because it dropped my rib cage down, I started pulling with more of a neutral spine instead of my big archy tendencies that we have as multi-ply lifters or equip lifters. And so as I'm cueing this rib cage down, I started to figure out how to tuck my pelvis. And then a huge thing that I see a lot of guys do is that when they're trying to open their knees, they kind of conceptualize it from the knee. They're trying to just push their knees out instead of use the glute into extension and abduction and external rotation to pull their knees out of the way. So that concept hit home for me. Waved it up, pulled a monster PR against gray bands, and I made sure I primed it with my hook grip. It's about 100 and some odd pound hook grip PR, which is my rate limiter. So I was peaked for a mid-8s pull, and I didn't even get to pull on the platform.
Going back to the good mornings, what is your intent there? Is it glutes, low back? The reason I ask that is, say the bar position at the bottom, are you trying, if it's over toe, it's going to be more low back, right? If it's like midfoot, it's going to be more glute. And there's a big difference,
there is,
between those two. And people will throw out good mornings, like, oh, you need to do good mornings.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how? It's
the
easy way to explain it is one's rounded back, one's arched back, but it's not.
Exactly.
It's more complex than that, but that's a very simple way to make it. But the intent matters.
Yeah, so mine was to strategically hack into my conventional deadlift without conventional deadlifting. So I came up with this strap pause system. So you go to the bottom, pause on the straps like a box squat. Mm-hmm. I kind of wanted a static overcome by dynamic effect for that. So I started running these strap pauses, and then I realized it made everybody safer because they could just collapse on the strap if they got out of position. So now everybody runs it. And then I ran a bunch of different leverages, and I found that if I made it hip dominant with more of a Mars bar, a cambered bar, and even though a spider bar is a high bar leverage because of that angle of the bar, it kind of becomes more hip dominant. And then I just started mixing in foot positions. And then I don't mess with the rounded back too much. I kind of try to keep it a neutral stack. I'll either go neutral or arched. I don't mess with too much of a flex one. If I did, it'd just be higher rep, something like that. But I looked back at my old training protocols, and when I would run beltless 5s up to like a top set, and then I throw the belt on for 1. But that was when I could recover a lot better when I was younger and healthier. So then I just kept them all beltless. And then the goal was to be able to feel it in the glute. And so I started hammering those, and that was a big breakthrough as well.
Well, I think a takeaway on that movement, or just basically any good morning, is if they're running a wave of that, they may change how they're actually doing it from week 1 to week 4. So week 4's exercise is not even close to week 1's exercise.
Yep.
But they think that they got a lot stronger.
Yep.
Because
we've seen this,
especially on the suspended one, because
Yep.
they can go from basically a good morning to a squat.
Yeah, they roll. Well, that's why. So I hated that concept of how the guys swing it and swing it back into a quarter squat. And also I wanted a consistent depth gauge. So that was why I was like, okay, if we're not starting from, so we unrack it out of the mono. What's cool about it is like a safety bar. We'll unrack with just barely you're scraping the hooks. And then we'll hinge over. I tell everybody, I don't have them go deep to a deadlift position. We go to more of like what would be like a pin 2, 15-inch, something like that position. And so I'll have them hinge over, and I say kind of, you want to have your hands in the middle of your shins, and that's kind of where we'll set your straps. and then we can hinge back and then touch that. And I want to see the full strap lengthen out under tension, pause, and then we go from there. And what that gave me in the deadlift is it gave me that starting strength in the back that I was missing. That ended up being the best thing about my conventional rack pulling, that I don't have. I don't know if it's wear and tear, or if it's, my bulge disc in my back, or if it's, belly into hip, I can't get tight, but I can circumvent that when I'm doing my good mornings. And so what's cool about that too is like the different specialty bars. Some of those guys, like conventional deadlifters, I gear them more towards a safety bar. If they're a sumo puller, they're going to do a lot more the bully bar, maybe with some band and some chain. We would do choke bands on the spider bar. And that one's pretty cool because you can use a lot of band, but because you're stretching the band up when you're moving forward, you can hack it on max effort day. So these guys, we'd get into a max effort battle and I'm like, all right, fuck it, let's just add another band. And then they would think that it was extra weight, but it actually helps pull you up.
Yeah.
So I could squeak out a win there from a guy that I knew was stronger than me.
Now, I assume it's a soft touch on the strap.
No. So I don't want them to bounce. I want them to, they hit the strap. I want to see it go to full end length, 1 count, pause, and then we come up.
Okay. But they're not releasing.
No, it's not like a total release. No.
Yeah.
And so, what I was going to say about that height difference, now this could be what I know some people like them low. I'm not trying to knock them. From having so many SI issues, I know that when we're in a really deep hinge pattern, especially with that long lever being on your upper back, like a good morning, we're gapping that SI. And if we have any shift, we start wreaking havoc there and lighten that up. So I cut that just a little high. It allows us to use more weight. Yes, we're cheating, whatever that is, but it builds similar trunk position to a deadlift either way.
Well, it can be dicey too, because if you go too low, you're gonna lose position.
Exactly. And just you know how this is with this, like a safety bar, like just the bar, if you aren't paying attention, is enough because the lever is so long and it's out in front of you. And then we get in, and so I tried to go maximally efficient with this. So we'd add forward bands to it because I'm like, okay, this guy's going to have a plate and a quarter on, and we're going to get a max effort set of 5 out of him. And that is really light wear and tear on this guy. And it's a horrible movement, and you're sore and you're toasted, but nothing's getting fucked up. Mm-hmm. So that was good with all the good morning stuff. But yeah, I have those in now. That's a huge one for my fighters, is I'm noticing they're getting a monster carryover out of the good morning. And that's a demographic that I don't want to or need to make high skilled in a compound for powerlifting standards. I don't need them to be, we can pull them from the floor sumo because that's a little easier for beginners. We're not teaching them a crazy true sumo technique. But if we're just kicking the hips back and we're pausing on the strap, I could scale the height. We can progressively go lower across a wave, but it's a very easy concept to teach the hinge and then teach them how to brace with a long access type of a lever.
Well, that brings up an interesting question, because while that demographic, or just say athletes in general, they don't need the technical acuity of a power lifter in the core lifts, right? Mm-hmm. But the more technically sound a movement is, the safer the movement's going to be. That would be my belief.
Exactly.
So I think when people hear that, they'll think it's okay for all the lifts to look completely like shit. And if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're really saying is it just needs to be like a 7. It doesn't have to have the skill of a 10, but it still needs to be that 7 instead of just the 3.
Well, so we're always trending towards, we want it to be like a 10, but there's a whole concept of what's great about the conjugate system for these people is they need the leverage changes, all that stuff, blah, 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 the dynamic, that's all makes sense to most people. But what's great is if you can put something in like that, it's a relatively low skilled movement to grasp the concept of, and it's way easier to get them closer to the 7, 8, 9, or 10 with the technique right away. A lot of these kids they have 2 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And they train 3 times a day in Muay Thai or wrestling or whatever it is they do. So I have a very short time with them, and some of them have parents that are waiting in the parking lot. So I don't have the time and logistics in my program to sit there and fine tune up a deadlift. And they're explosive, very good athletes. So they're already at the point of kind of the old clean for the lineman kind of a thing. They're already strong enough to move weight that could hurt them.
Yeah.
So I don't need to engineer that up. I could cut that high. We can squat a little bit high. Oh my God, bar the doors. And then guess what? We might do a pin squat that's a little bit high. And then afterwards we jump over and we give them a goblet squat and they do 4 sets of 30. Yeah. Roast that lower half pattern. And these guys are flying. And then what's cool about it is I wanted to make sure I was doing my diligence. I'm like, are we getting stronger in the full range? Throw them in a low box squat because they learned how to box squat. And these guys all skyrocketed. High school kids, 15 years old, low box squatting in the 4s.
Yeah, where I'm coming from is I've actually heard coaches say that if you have a shitty technical lift and that shitty technical lift becomes a stronger shitty technical lift, then they got stronger. And I don't disagree.
Yep.
That's true. But the better answer would be to pick movements that are almost impossible to fuck up.
Exactly what it is.
If their deadlift looks like shit all the time, then you just have them pull off blocks.
Yep.
Or find something that's easier to teach, and then if you need to,
easy to teach, easy to execute.
Easy to execute, yes, easy to execute to be able to get them stronger.
And then a lot of these people, they miss the point of what it's like to be a college athlete or like professional Muay Thai fighters, stuff like this, where your main focus is in there. That's the vast majority of your training. So I'm going to get you running on reserve brain power. I'm not going to be able to teach you this high level concept, nor is it going to be beneficial if I'm sitting here daunting you to death, and they're high paced people. You can't get them tired. They want to get in, warm up, and go. So it forces me into a corner in an awesome way because I have to be exponentially efficient, but get everything done. So I had to make my warm-ups better. They had to be more efficient. They had to be shorter, but still get them warm, right? We had to warm up hip capsules, shoulders, backs, cores, all this stuff, hamstrings. And then it's like, okay, how can I put this into the, use the needs analysis of the athlete? How can I put it akin to them? How can we run max effort in circuits? We do an upper and a lower max, back and forth, boom, boom, boom. And what's crazy about it is that with the technical aspect of it, they're such good athletes, and all their sport is knowing how to move their body in space. So once they grasp a concept, I had one guy that was the worst hinge pattern guy I've ever seen. We threw him in a belt squat, couple doubled strong bands in there. It's heavy. And I taught him how to hinge. Just unlock the pelvis, stretch the hamstring, bring the pelvis down back, drop the rib cage. And then he goes in, and within 2 weeks, he's one of the top guys. When we just ran our 5 rep max on the RDL, we walk it out of a rack. And just like that, the RDL choice, it's easier for them to learn a hinge pattern starting from the top down because they can set their spine instead of trying to wedge in and set our spine and then move a bar. So I looked at it, I'm like, oh, this is a secondary. And then I'm like, I don't care what the terminology is behind this and the nuance. They move better there, so we can tax that to their version of a max effort. As we talked about before, it kind of changes. And so they did max 5s. Everybody was rocking huge PRs and nobody hurt anything. And they got awesome work in, and they felt like they moved some heavy weight, and it was a great, successful day.
We live in some crazy times right now where there's not a day that I don't go on the internet and I see some BS crap about this research study or this research study. This isn't new. I've been in this industry for 4 decades. One thing that's helped me is 8 years ago, the mass research review started and became a godsend. The mass research team are professional researchers that are also meatheads. So they've done this great job of being able to take all these topics and put them into this research review that I get every month. I'm excited to partner with them. I spoke with Eric Helms about this on the podcast. It's simple, it's easy. They're offering a 20% discount to all podcast listeners. The code is elitefts20. When you join, you get the research review, which is going to be sent to you every single month. That has 7 to 9 articles in there. The archive, which is 1,500 articles, thousands of videos. Just head over to massresearchreview.com and use the code elitefts20. The link will be in the description. Okay, and what we're going to do is you sent 2 programs from 2 of your athletes. You work with athletes in person and online. So you've worked with hundreds, if not 1,000 athletes, who knows at this point, but a lot. And I fed these into a large language model and asked for a Venn diagram of the 2 that you sent, just to kind of see what aspects of the training were in both programs.
Very cool. Very cool.
It's very limited because it's just 2 programs. Yeah. If it was 100 programs, it would be better. But with these 2 vastly different people.
Yeah. These are 2 of the most. This is a 6 foot, 300 plus pounder who's a classic raw lifter and works with his hands manual labor. And then we have Danny, who is 123 pound, about to be professional Muay Thai fighter.
Okay.
So yeah, as contrasted as you can get.
And what it pulled, and I didn't do a deep dive into all this, so there's probably more things that are in both, that are universal, we'll say, was miniband tension, rep lower. The ones that really stick out are the RPE auto-regulation and the hamstring exercises. So if we're to extrapolate that amongst all your clients, granted, this is N2, right? Yeah, which doesn't mean in there, but some of those components like the RPE auto-regulation and the rep lower sessions and hamstrings are probably going to fall with all the clients that you're working with.
Yep.
So let's first talk a little bit more about who these two people are. Then we'll go into those variables that are consistent. The other one that would be in there would be the definition of the RPE, and how those are defined in the programs that you have.
Yep.
And so who's Cody and who's Danny?
Okay, so Cody he's been in the Michigan powerlifting scene forever, helping out meets, put his dues in. He's came down here for one of your Train Your Ass Off seminars. What was very cool is he was an up-and-coming kid and everybody loved him, so we got a bunch of us local powerlifters to chip in to send him down here for that. So that's something cool we did. He has his own gym in Gladwin, Michigan. Oh, geez, I think it's called Forged Fitness. Awesome spot, super conjugate. They have everything. Check them out. If I got the name wrong, I'm sorry, Cody. But he is a big heavyweight powerlifter. He's going to do classic raw. I believe he wants to jump into the gear one day. That's him. And then Danny, MMT, that's Michigan Muay Thai, huge, awesome hub for Muay Thai in Michigan. They opened up maybe 3 bays down from us. It was perfect. We knew some of the same people. Their coach contacted me and asked me to run the strength conditioning. That's how I got Danny. She is an amateur Muay Thai fighter / pro. They have a lot of nuance there. It's almost like the strongman pro cards, but there's world champs that beat those guys, but they're not considered pro because they haven't done the pro show. All kinds of stuff. Danny, so Cody had a very large base coming in. He's been training for years on his own, putting in his own concepts. And then he hit me up, which was a very big honor. I was very excited to train him. He's already flying. And then Danny started out and she didn't even lift weights really. So we were starting from square one, literally goblet squat, knees caving in with 17 pounds in her hand. And then peaked her at a 270 pound safety squat bar box squat.
All right. So with RPE, how do you define that? For actually open up one of the programs.
So what my goals with these guys that you'll see in Cody's and I believe Danny's is I used to start to just give out information when it was needed, and then I figured out it was exponentially better just to shotgun all of that stuff and let them digest it at their own accord. So a concept I got from you so they could ask me better questions as an athlete. And so I break down everything. I put like a band tension thing in there. I have the RPE scale. The way I put it in there is I have it...
Open up the PDF file.
I have it in there in 3 different... whatever it would be called. I don't know. 3 different forms. I have a reps and reserve.
Yeah, either one of the PDFs. It doesn't...
Classic raw?
Yeah, it'll be there. Right there.
All right, you'll have to blow that up if you can.
Like that?
Yeah.
Yep, that'll work.
All right, so scroll down. All right, so your scale is here.
Yep, so I have the RPE, which is kind of the main one I want them to understand. And then this was kind of more for the power lifters because they've probably dabbled in a reps and reserve or percentage-based training. So I wanted to make a chart so then they could accurately figure out what their RPEs were. So I gave them kind of an estimated percentage. Now, yes, there's nuance here. Some people call it higher or lower. I was just going off of rough estimates, and then me and them will work on honing in what would be their true 7. But I wanted to give them 3 different ways to look at this so then they could kind of equate it to what was ever in their brain, almost like coaching cues in different capacities. And then just getting them to understand concepts. And then I kind of do a big, long breakdown. The RPE scale in general is kind of based off of my buddy Taylor Goen that I've told you about. he came up with the VESP RPE scale, which is kind of a 2-man, where if I was doing a weight and I said it was a 7, he said it was an 8, that'd be our 7.5 or whatever like that. And so his explanation is kind of what I stole here. So something like a 7 bar speed's fast, like an 8 will have a small amount of slowing down of the bar speed, which I know that means they're working a little bit harder to finish that rep, but we don't have any technical breakdown. If we start to see, kind of a technical breakdown, I call that a 9. And if it's just kind of, I backed it down 1 just on purpose, like a 10 would kind of be a max effort, but I don't even want them to see a 10 because we'd like to leave a little something in the tank, especially for the athletes. So I kind of tell them, like, if form is breaking down at all, we're calling that a 9, even if you can finish it. And then, and then they'll get higher towards that 10, obviously, as they're a skilled lifter.
With what you mentioned with Taylor, it reminded me, there was a time when I was working with a group of the lifters that were out here, and I came up with a PM, a perceived max, right?
Yep.
So whatever the weight was for that day, I would want them to warm up and say, okay, look, I want you to do a 7, for 2 sets of 5, 7 of that perceived max. So as you're warming up and it's a main compound lift, you should know, like at 50, 60, 70%, right around there, you should kind of know, if I was to max out today, this is about where it would be plus or minus 20 pounds. Exactly. And then the other person would have to agree that that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, same kind of a system.
Completely fucking utter disaster because they always worked up to max out to be able to figure out what that was because they'd say, well, I didn't know. I'm like, this. So I love the idea. Like if it could be implemented, but it has to be like everybody on the same page, and then
they all had the same specs.
They can't max out because that would be the optimum way to do it, because it would be based upon that day exactly.
Yep.
And most lifters who have a decade of experience kind of know.
Yep, exactly.
At least within 50 pounds.
Exactly. Well, that's why, like these guys, I wanted to put in 3, and then I mentioned to you earlier, we started even putting in one step further with the RPE check set at the end, where I just drop a little bit of, and I don't do that. It's not even programmed in weekly. It might just be that day I auto-regulate it, like, hey, we got to check this because these are moving like speed reps. And so I'll put the RPE check set in, and just about every time they're repping that out for way more than what would be the reps in reserve or the relative percentage or relative RPE.
Yeah. All right. So go ahead and scroll down on this so we get into his program. All right. So actually stop there. You kind of already talked about this a little bit, but with the rack pulls and the pull systems, you're telling them exactly how far that bar has to be.
Yep. So because they might have any different setup. And so some guys like Jake's old gym, he couldn't do rack pulls. They had those like front side racks mounted to the wall or whatever. And so then it's like, all right, if you got to build plates up and put it on the lowest safety, whatever, I just want them to have a metric from the floor, from the plates, or from the floor to the plate, and then from the standing platform to the bar, so they can't mess it up. And then we can use all 3 of those as indicators for different leverages and what's messed up or weak in your pattern for your deadlift. And then also kind of with the deadlift thing, we can expose some of those mobility issues as well.
All right, so pull down.
And so like this was some of the stuff that I used to I would send them, hey, you need a route. And then I would send them this. I'm like, no, fuck that. And I put in all of this stuff. And this is just one, like some of these can get populated like crazy. And I'm really getting into pumping out all this info and letting them digest, and then they can ask me more succinct questions on what's exactly going on. But what's cool, they can kind of have this at home, and they look through these videos, and then they'll start to mess with it more so than they would if I told them after the fact that they needed to mess with it. They can start to implement it.
So this, if you see that their routing's bad.
Yeah, that's how I used to do it. Now I just send it right up there. Boom, let's go. I make sure they understand what's going on with the upper back stuff. And those are 2 rooting videos. Kind of one is a rudimentary one, and then one's a more complex one. And I kind of will always make a video. And then me being a coach and a science-brain person, I always kind of overcomplicate it. And then I'm like, all right, I need to make one step below that. And then I'm like, okay, do I even need to translate that further? So a lot of these, like in my exercise library, I'll have like 4 tiers. There'll be a monkey see, monkey do one. There'll be a short clip explanation, 30 seconds, 2-minute one, and then maybe like an 8-minute video. That's the entire concept.
Okay. So you're hitting all demographics.
I'm trying to hit all demographics because, and what it's just, it might not even be akin to their knowledge base or their skill. It might be just something, if we dummied it down, they might respond and understand it better.
Or if they've done it before and they just need to be refreshed on it,
exactly.
They can click the shorter one. All right, keep scrolling down because I think this is just an exercise index.
Yeah, and so what was cool about that is we kind of learned some of that from the Coaching Revolution stuff. Is like, oh, there's a big need for regression and progression in terms of the translation of your information, All
right, so what is this here?
So this, I kind of so he actually made that grid on the side, and those were his top 5 most important ones that gave him better mobility in his main stuff. And then, so some of this is just, I put this in, and this is kind of general stuff that we see from the demographic and most people in general that sit at a desk, right? So we have hip flexors are tight, so I teach them some hip flexor pails and rails. Lock T-spine, we want to open up that back. T-spine extension, and then the 90-90 pails and rails is also just to open up the hips and stuff like that.
So what does mess with on your off days mean?
Mess with it on your off day, I literally tell them, like, go in and take an hour and just go through this and do it to the best of your ability. Let me know what works. They will film this and send it to me so I can actually break down their technique on their mobility as well. Because if we're stretching a hip in a 90-90, but we're just rolling over at the spine, we're not getting any stretch through the actual posterior part of the hip. We're just rounding and compensating. So this has worked wonders, because when they understand how to move their body in space to target a muscle group, it's way easier for them to segment their spine and understand how that goes under like a squat.
Yeah.
So that was, and this was kind of shotgun approach. That it was that, and then if you scroll down, there's some more there. And there's just general hip mobility. There's some distraction in there, internal rotation, half kneeling stretch. So again, just common themes I've seen over the last decade plus is we get a lot of jammed up hip capsules. So I want to create some joint space. And then I know that, especially in our demographic, we're externally rotating all the time, and we have a lack of internal rotation. And that is what leads to the compressed hip, and then also prevents us from abducting and externally rotating at the hip a lot. So that's just a problem that we see out of the gate. So I'm like, I'm going to put that in. And then we have rectus femoris, psoas, and quad in general. That's always tight on a lot of guys. So I just kind of throw that in. And then, of course, the T-spine mobility and learning how to segment all of that.
So if they start with you and they start doing these things, how long does it take to notice a difference in those lifts if they're applying these things? I
would say it's within if they are doing it the way they're supposed to be doing it, we'll see a change in position in about 2 weeks. And then what's cool about that is after about that 2-week period, they start to make, that's kind of where he got that. He's like, all right, these are giving me the most bang for my buck. And then we talk about it, and then I figure out the why. And then that can also help me aid in setting up future training for that. So like a huge one for everybody. And we kind of went down this rabbit hole of spinal stability, but they try to prime and mobilize their flexion extension pattern at the upper back, but they're not really truly stable in the spine because they have no rotation. So we started to open up their rotation first with those reapers on there.
Click on the reapers.
So there should be a band reaper and a mace reaper on there.
Down.
To the left. Right there, yep.
This one here?
Yep. And I'm not sure which one this will be. Oh, yep. So this is a mace reaper. So basically we're just folding into a 90-degree flexion at the hip. We're rounding our low back on purpose, but actively bracing our belly. That way, when we're rotating, we're getting T-spine rotation only and no lumbar rotation, because we don't want that at all. But I explained the concept, and this is kind of a bigger breakdown. I think the band reaper was just practicality. If you don't have a mace, or if we're doing it for, I have some people superset it in their bench, because it's that effective at getting their T-spine extended. We'll superset, we'll do 10 each side band reapers with like a micro hanging on the pin on the bench. And they can do that, open up their upper back, and then each set they're getting better and better extension, and they peak with that top set at their best form. So I'm going through right now, we're building out this exercise library. So there's some, I can't remember, some of them that are simple. If it's like a bicep curl, I might just throw in a YouTube video, but you probably know this from years doing this. The fitness industry is so horrible. Some of these days I'm like, I just need a quick video, and I go through 30 of them and they're all horrible. I can't even, so then that's, I write it down and then I just go make that. But so I have them experiment with this stuff, and then they do what Cody did. I'm like, make a bank what's good, and then we see that, and then I can expand upon that or add or take away drills, or if I have to change something for practicality purposes, for time, equipment, mobility restriction, whatever that is, we can hone on that better. And then by the 1 month in, their technique is exponentially better than in the previous programs I had.
So what are the repetitions that you're going to put in here?
So I will give them general stuff usually in the video. So something like this, we're about like 10 each side. I do a lot of 20s and stuff because I like the really high repetition, and then it gives them a chance to maybe run through 5 and figure out their pressure where they need to be, and then they tighten their technique up. They get through 5, and then maybe the next 10 they can really push that mobility because they understand the technique across the whole set.
All right, now these are being done for their mobility, right?
Yep.
And so if they're in tune with the movement, if I understand this correctly, it may only take 5 or 6 reps, or it may take 10 reps.
So then they have the ability to shorten that up. I tell them, I'm like, just get in and get out. Like and so we'll kind of have some standards. I'm like, all right, if you got a, let's say it was 20 degrees internal rotation or something. If we're getting there with 2-3 reps, like that joint is primed for today. Let's work on something else. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's an important point to put out there.
Yep.
Because when people get into some of this mobility shit, as you know, they'll do 15 different things, and it takes them an hour.
We have some guys that are going to be here tomorrow squatting, they're going to do the same shit, and you're going to
it's like a lot of these you're just testing. It's there, it's good.
Yeah.
Move to it takes 1 or 2 reps, move on to the next one. It's kind of, I kind of use like a foam roller example. Like if I lay on the ground and I start foam rolling my quad and my hips, I'm looking for a hot spot.
Exactly.
If there's no hot spot, cool.
And then people just put it in as routine. It's not even doing anything.
Yeah.
That's part of what I have on my exercise library that you can subscribe to for $3.99 a month. I have a code for that, by the way. I always fuck that up at the end. But
what's the code?
Table Talk 20 or $10 off a year. I think
there you go.
I have it in my notes. But where were we going with that?
And with the testing, using the mobility exercises or whatever you want to say, I'll use the foam roller as an example, is like a pass through. It's like it's a pass through, and if I'm using that foam roller and I find a hot spot, I'm probably going to use the percussor to actually get into that spot. But I know after passing through on the foam roller where I need to hit the percussor, instead of sitting there for 15 minutes hitting every goddamn thing that doesn't need to be hit, that's already primed and it's already good to go. Because you wonder, like, if the mobility, because mobility is a scale. Right. Yeah. So if you become too mobile, now you're fucked, right? If you're not mobile enough, you're fucked.
Yep.
It needs to be right in that one spot.
Yeah, it has to be optimal.
Yes. And that's where we've seen this trend come and go, to where it becomes that 1 hour type of thing, where it doesn't need to be.
Or it's the nothing.
Or it's zero.
Well, so that's what I put in this library. That's what I was going to get into is, I put in there, I'll do like what people take out of these podcasts, where the gold is us explaining it and then translating it and getting people to understand the concept behind it. So I have strategies for whatever. So I just made one yesterday, strategies for mobilizing on the day, whatever it is. And it's okay. If we're squatting, it's okay. My heels tend to come up when the weight gets heavy. It's like, what is my strategy? Do I just need to get under the bar and then hopefully my heels touch the ground when the weight's there or whatever? Or is it like, hey, I know that I need to mobilize that ankle for me to hit my squat depth properly and keep my heels grounded. So that's okay. That might be a good selection for that. And then I compound it even further. It's like, okay, what are we doing? Like, are we gonna temper the calf? Are we stretching the calf? And then once we do that, that could be maybe the only thing holding on for dear life for your ankle stability. So we need to learn how to mobilize and then activate a reciprocal muscle. And so I start explaining to them these concepts so they can learn it. And then I give them a bunch of examples of how we plug it and play it. And then I even have stuff in there where it's pairing of things. It's like, okay, if I'm mobilizing my calf, here's an anterior tib activation drill so we can not only just mobilize, but we create some active stability in the ankles. I can't tell you how many guys I've seen first time ever, their calves are concrete, and then they just temper the hell out of their calves and they're shaking all like a leaf in their squat because they have no stability. They don't understand that's our body's form of pseudo stability is tension. If it's tight, we're immobile and we're probably unstable in that area as well.
All right, let's jump back to the PDF.
Yeah, I don't like looking at my face for this long, man. This is It's a lot.
All right, so we got through the mobility stuff, so scroll down.
That's like basically everything. That's his gym list.
Yeah.
And he has everything. Got the fancy header there. That took me a lot of years to figure out. I'm horrible at technology.
All right, so is this a training day that we're looking at here?
So that's a training day if you start at the top. So these are for this big long list is for the really serious guys that want to go to a high level. We attack it on all fronts. I put their lower GPP in to start the upper, and that's in for almost an active recovery session to get the blood pumping and up to temperature in general. And then we actively recover the lower half, and we build a massive amount of work capacity for them. And they do that before they even start benching. And as us weathered powerlifters know, you might have to put in, if you're not doing something like this, you might have to put in, I have to show up an hour before the bench crew so I can mobilize my hips to get into my bench position correctly. But if we have stuff like this, hopefully they won't have to get to that position I was in.
So all those are done at a very low RPE.
These are, so some of the stuff I throw on the belt squat hinge, we have 250 to 300 pounds weight on your hip. It sounds heavy, and it is, but what I want to see them is get up on stride where that breaks them down, like to where they train up to where that gets down to like an RPE 6, where it's just more, I'm burning because it's 20 reps instead of how heavy it is. But yeah, these are normal, like same thing with the sissy squats. These guys, and all this is we're just priming full range of motion at the knee. We're lengthening the rectus femoris, and we're keeping the knees healthy, and that's in there. And then, we want to see that if that's hard for them in general, we know they're drastically out of shape and drastically immobile. So I want to see these all trend down to where it's just basically active recovery at like a 7 or a 5.
All right, keep scrolling down.
And then this is another one that's unique for my stuff that a lot of people talk shit about, but it's more of a fitness thing where I'm noticing all of us, right? We have the meathead syndrome, internal rotation, upper traps locked up. We don't have a lot of scap mobility. And we could go through a bunch of nuanced little things. I just found out if I put a lat pull over to extend the T-spine in first. The rows have more volume on purpose because we want to pack these athletes full of rowing, as we all know. And then they do a bunch of face pulls to prime the posterior shoulder. And then it is, to the naked eye, everybody's going to be like, what the hell's going on? Why are we doing back before we bench? I don't care what anybody says. What I see is once they're on par and getting good enough shape to do what this type of a lifter said they want to do, they are exponentially better off in the shoulder. They're more stable in the shoulder girdle. They have better position. They have better upper back extension, all kinds of stuff. And then we go into their bench.
Click that link for the single arm dumbbell row forward of mini to see if that's what I think it is.
Now, this one will be right along with what we were talking about the lat, right? So these are dummy-proofed exercises. So I put the band pulling forward.
Yeah.
Just so we have to pull back into the band to activate the lat. And just for me, I ran into that problem. That's how I solved it, is I couldn't get a lat pump. And so I had to just put stuff in to force me to do it. And so I'm like, instead of going through this whole learning curve, I can make it practical so they can just throw a band up, grab a dumbbell, loop it around the back of your arm and go.
All right. Go back to the PDF. So that forces you to pack the lats. That's what I thought it was. All right, so then, and now he's on to his main.
Mm-hmm.
Reverse grip.
That's just touch and go. They know what that is, I think. So this is my version of a conjugate hypertrophy off season. So we have variations. I do a lot of rep maxes to kind of, it builds volume. So when they do this, if you look, they do 12 reps every set starting with the bar. 12 with the bar, 12 with the quarter, 12 with the plate, 12 with the plate and quarter, so on and so forth. They pack a lot of volume in there, and then it kind of appeases the meathead in them. If they have an RM of any kind in, it doesn't matter. They can push hard there. They can feel like they're working hard, akin to how most people think you gotta max out all the time. It's never going to be a true 12 RM because they're completely smoked by the time they get
up there. I was going to say that's a ton of volume.
Yep, it is. And so these programs are not for the faint of heart, and it's also scaled per the individual. Obviously, it's not, this kid was in great shape. He'd been putting in a lot of work over the years, and I knew he could do something if we turned him into iron. So that's what we're doing.
My triceps somehow feel shot from the rows.
Yeah. So what that is usually, right?
Short head of the band. Yeah, he's trying to. Yeah.
Right? So it's the band. So these guys, when they're in pattern with that lat, what happens is we have compensations. We have the long head of the tricep connects to the scap. So we start pulling in. A lot of people are like, I'm cramping in my tricep. What the hell is going on? They don't understand. They don't have the requisite mobility in the shoulder. So they're getting a little bit of crampiness because they're fighting a reciprocal muscle somewhere, probably something that's pulling the scap into protraction because they're rolling forward.
Yeah. He could probably fix that just by focusing more on the lats while he's doing the movement.
Exactly, right? So then that was exactly, so the fix is, hey, pull back into the band first and then roll into your back pocket and then boom, all that's going.
All right, let's scroll down.
This is a scap-free press here. This one's worked wonders for every one of my athletes for opening up the shoulder capsule, fixing their...
Click on that one, the snatch grip and their head press. Most of the people I know can't even get in this position.
So this is, yep. So there, I have regressions and progressions.
So if they can't get in that position, where the hell do you start?
So how we start is we would turn the lifter around and we would actually, those top pegs where you put your fives or whatever that is, we attach minis and then we get them a big long PVC pipe so they can put their hands out as wide as they want and the band pulls them back. And then when I started, I had to go with no weight and put my hands on the third all the way out. And I just started moving a little bit, work my hands in. Wouldn't you know it, my mobility got better across the board. And then we cue this with maximal scap movement. Push up, shrug up if you want. That's okay. I don't care about that for this one because if they shrug up, they're going to know how to shrug down.
Yeah.
Or retract, whatever. So that's in there. And all that is just posterior capsule priming. And then this aids in their back squat. We start eliminating the elbow issues from squatting with a straight bar. And then we can put in more straight bar at a bigger frequency without killing them.
Dave Tate here from Elite FTS to talk to you about bands. We've been a supplier of bands for almost 2 decades now. So I've known my way around the band landscape. When I'm talking about bands, I'm talking about floss bands, long bands, short bands, bands you can use for resistance training, mobility training, body weight training, and flossing. One of our most popular bands, or actually our most popular bands, are the long bands. The long bands are typically used the most with squats, bench presses. Our floss bands are bands that you wrap around the joint to be able to help with mobility, circulation. And the short bands are designed for shorter range movements, bench press, deadlifts, and a lot of times people will use them with resistance machines to help accommodate the strength resistance curve. Head over to elitefts.com and look for bands in the toolbar or blowout menu. All right, back to the program.
And you get a nice shot of my imbalanced shoulders there too. So
snatch grip.
And then we have more scap-free pressing.
Well, go back up. So push-ups on barbell at the bottom of the rack, 2 sets to failure. So that's more volume.
Just
so there, scroll, let me know, go the other direction. All right, so we have the high volume reverse grip, right? Scroll down. And then this movement after that snatch.
That snatch grip is
it's kind of a break.
That's super low RPE. That's just, we're getting them in. It's like, I'm like, just pick a weight where you can go for the full range. And then we're just cranking it. And we might add 5 pounds every couple of weeks.
No, but it's a way to help. Scroll down just a little bit so we can see all 3 of these things. All right. So it is a way to manage fatigue during the actual training session though.
Yep. So that one is more, I would consider it more of a loaded mobility type of an exercise.
Yeah. So, but you're going to have the time it takes to be able to do that, which, what are there, 2 sets or something like that of the snatch grip, right? So you got the setup and you have that. So you're looking at maybe 7 minutes.
When they go, this looks like a bunch and it is, but once they figure out they set up everything in advance and they'll be able to crank through this and they get it an hour and 15 minutes. It's nothing crazy. But what I like about this is like, we'll free up the scaps because we have a big problem with our active stability in our scap. We free those scaps up. So when we're doing our push-ups, we can start to flare the shoulder blades and actually start to punch and train that press with a good stable scap instead of winging the scaps back and pinning them into retraction, which in swaying the lumbar spine, which we see everybody do when they do those push-ups on the bar.
Well, you'll be able to put more force into the push-ups too if the push-ups were right after the reverse grips.
Yeah, and this wasn't, I'm just designing this haphazardly. It was, okay, this sequences and the body's telling me that, so I just put it in.
All right, so now scroll down so we get the accessory circuit.
So this is just superset on the arms. This guy loves the super conjugate stuff, so I put in some complex stuff. This can be pick an attachment, bicep, tricep. So for my seasoned veterans, I go bicep, tricep. I give them rep ranges. I'll go maybe 4 sets, and I'll say 8 to 20, anywhere in there. You know, if it hurts, you know, something's dinged, we'll go towards 20, keep the intensity down. And then we have what is kind of our SPP kind of a circuit kind of thing. We talked about the tricep extensions after with the band. And that's all. So they have this stuff where if you scroll down a little bit so we can see the cable fly all the way down to that whole body. Yeah, there you go. And all this stuff is just kind of, this is what, when you spoke with Jake Siebert about asking more intelligent questions, he came to me with a really good question here. And he's like, what's the section? What's the intention? Am I squeezing maximal bodybuilding tension? I'm like, no, we're not doing that for 50 reps. I'm like, we're cranking them out with as close to good form as you can, but this is just bulletproof the body section. That's all we're doing.
Basically just blood flow.
That's just blood flow. I'm trying to make sure that we have access to all these ranges. There's some extra what we talked about last time, which I thought was junk volume on the triceps, but I took it out and the benches went down, so it's in. And then we hit a little rotator cuff. I have since upgraded the rotation, the internal rotation, because I found some extra or some better exercises with the scap and protraction and all kinds of stuff.
Scroll down. And then that.
And then we got some core.
And then the core. So that, now this is day 1, week 1.
Yep.
As this goes through the training, how long is this wave?
So my waves are typically 4 weeks. Deload the 5th week. We'll progress. So if I have 20 in there, I usually scale it down just to make sure we're having a linear progression. So they might do 20, 15, 12, 10. And then I would tell them I want that bodybuilder style last few reps are near failure. So just theoretically, they'll have to increase weight to get near that failure threshold. And that core is a circuit. There's reverse hypers, I believe, underneath that. They do reverse hypers about 4 days a week. We do working weight heavy on 2 days, and then we do 50% of that for double the reps on the next day. So it's kind of linear volume, but we just give them a little break on how heavy it goes.
Now, for sake of time, this is one upper body day. What is the other upper body day?
So this would be, this would be typical conjugate stuff. That would be kind of treated as his max effort day.
Yeah.
And then the other day would just be more linear volume type stuff.
With the same movements, or the movements change?
They all change.
All right, go ahead and scroll down. We'll see it when we get there.
So some stuff follows a theme. I might stretch the muscle belly in a little bit different angle, or if it's like a tricep, I'll hit a different angle head of the tricep. I open up the upper back the same way, but I might add in I might do a cross bench dumbbell lat pull over. We might do one with a strap on an incline bench. I might do a standing lat pull over, something like that, single arm, anything like that.
Keep going now.
Yeah. So the lower warm up, go back up. What's a row? Click on the rower groin.
I actually dusted off the rower here and filmed that one time. So everybody's hated machine, the rower. I figured out how to do a really good extended hip groin exercise here. And then you're going to love this story. We ended up starting a contest with this, like a bunch of idiots, where we started loading an SSB on our back.
With this?
And then doing that. And then me and some guys started getting north of 200 pounds. And then we almost broke our $1,500 rower in half. And then I completely fell on the ground with like 250 loaded on my back, and then it was a disaster. But yeah. But so this one this is my longer nuanced video. I'm explaining the intricacies of the pelvic floor and why it correlates to our SI joint pain. This was originally made for SI joint pain relief. So I have programs in that I kind of will have specialty stuff, and some of these are on Google Sheets, some of them are on just blank white email if I have to explain. So I'll have SI joint people that's the only thing we're doing is we're rehabbing. What's crazy nowadays is I have kids that are so loyal to their coach, they'll sign up for an SI joint program with me, or just I'll review their technique while they still have that coach. And I'm like, I don't understand why you would, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just completely nuts.
All right, back to the program. All right, so belt squat hinge, we already talked about the Copenhagen planks. It's
standard there. And then,
standard.
And then, so kind of just changing leverage front squat. So he's a big meaty guy. And I usually start him out with a lot of front squats just to build some capacity in the upper back and in those quads. And that's kind of a normal thing. And then I usually pair that. I'll kind of do anterior chain load, posterior chain load with some rack pulls.
Scroll down.
And then, like I said, I use that rack pull as almost an assessment tool and kind of see where, you'll be able to tell kind of how good a deadlifter is right from when they start rack.
All right, stop right there. So we got the front squats, and we're at 8s at the beginning of the phase. RPE 7.
And remember last time we talked, I kind of tell them to set the first one at a 7, and then they just chase that. And then I give them checks too. I say, was it a 7 at the last set? And that'll let me determine their work capacity or if their RPE scale is skewed. If it's a 7 to start and it's a 10 at the end, I know their work capacity is horrible, something like that.
Now on this phase, how low will the reps drop by the end?
So this one, he runs 8s, and we just add 5 pounds a week. And then we peak at week 4. He would do a top set of 8 at an RPE 9.
All right. Then the hip thrusters, machines, glute ham raises. Scroll down. Stop. Seated hamstring curl with bands. So those look like they're going to be in here 4 days a week.
Ham curls?
Yeah.
Yep. Huge. A lot of volume in that posterior chain.
Yeah.
The hinges are in. The hamstrings are in. The tricep extensions, and some sort of adductor work. I just noticed a trend there over the years, and so that just started going in. And when I keep the frequency in, injuries go down, squats look better, performance goes up.
Now, why do you have the hanging leg raises in?
So I try to attack the core from multiple planes. So we'll have something like a glute ham raise, sit up. So I'm getting more hip flexion / psoas. We might throw a hanging knee raise in there because I can get a lot of good packing in this serratus, and then we're learning how to control and pull the body up from a different angle when the legs are floating versus the legs being fixed. That's a huge one for the psoas.
So you want them in cuffs then?
Yeah, we hang them from the elbow straps. If the guys don't have it, I've taken like 2 or 3 sets of blues and draped them over, and they feed their elbows through there. Really good way to use your bands, not for squatting and deadlifting. But what was crazy, like some of the stuff for the psoas, I knew some of these athletes had, it's almost a open chain versus closed chain thing with that psoas. I had one of my, he was a professional kickboxer, the guy's name was Ben Phillips, and we knew he had this locked up psoas, but he wasn't responding to kind of Thomas test, and then you hang a kettlebell off your foot and kind of do a knee raise. Wasn't responding to that, even though we knew he was getting good psoas work in there. So I switched it and I grounded his foot, and we switched it to a single leg sit up, and then it cured the problem. But same muscle group, just anchoring it 2 different ways and kind of fixed upper body versus fixed foot. And then we saw the change, which is something deep neurological that I'm trying to understand, but it's a cool rabbit hole to go down and figure out some shit.
All right. So the max effort.
So I kind of preface it, max effort, upper off season. And like we said, it's kind of wallpaper, right? It's just the days of the week, it's not real max effort.
Go back up again. So on this one here, you got the lower GPP, which is the same thing. All right. So scroll down so we can see everything under back.
Change the lat pull over, change the row. And then notice, don't shrug, because I always fucking shrug. Face pulls are the same, stagnant right across.
Yeah, scroll down. So main, now we're at overhead.
I like that combo a lot. The reverse grip and the overhead kind of compounded on 2 different days really sets us up to start rolling. After this wave, we roll right into the max effort and we start slinging.
Incline bench dumbbells. So this one here doesn't have the secondary brake movement.
Nope.
That's in there.
Well, so the reason...
Well, it's an overhead, I get it.
Yeah, so I kind of had the scat free there, so I try to put it in, and then if they have mobile shoulders, everything's looking good, I might pull that out. And then same thing, tricep, I just let them pick there, give them a little freedom with the program, and then that's kind of cool too. Some of that stuff, when you put that in, it gives you an insight into how your athlete's thinking. Like, is he just picking something because he's in a hurry, or he's lazy, or is he picking something with the elbow out to the side, or is the elbow in pain, so he's going to something else? So all that little stuff can leave you little breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
And then so same thing, kind of the other one was a cable fly. So we have a incline fly, just kind of expanding the chest.
Scroll down.
But just changing the leverage a little bit. I dropped the volume down on this day a little bit. And so for him, sometimes I'll just stack it up. We got glute ham raise sit-ups twice a week, just so we can kind of hammer that volume and get everything in check for what's coming in the next wave.
Now, how compliant are they with all this?
A guy like him dead nuts. I could say go run 15 miles for no reason. He's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
What I've gotten better at is opening up the communication. And if you have a hard stop on time, you leave me a note where you got through, and then I'll start to kind of plug and play some stuff that I could discount a little bit. Versus,
well, I can see the core being
well, exactly
real
right?
quick.
So I used to say we're doing core throughout the whole thing. So after every third set of anything, you have to go do something for the core. And then not thinking people would actually follow that. Some people are like, I did like 50 sets of core today. And I'm like, okay, that's crazy. So some of these crazy nut jobs that you get that you'd love to have. So I just make sure, and then kind of sometimes I'll tell them, you know, in the RPE slot or in that note that I'm like, what's your energy level going into this? And then if it's completely low, then we might put in on the Wednesday of their program, their off day. I'm like, all right, hammer the core here while it's kind of fresh in the brain, something like that.
All right. Scroll down. Then the last day of the week, upper GPP, basically the same type of thing.
Yeah, same type of thing.
Warm up, scroll down, lower groin, planks, hinge, main movement, buffalo bar. Let's see the whole main section.
The what?
No, scroll down. Stop. You went too far.
So yeah, this was just, I want to see a squat pattern. And then I was anticipating one of those things I was just talking about with the belt and some mobility issues. He's a big, thick guy. So I wanted to see kind of where his brace was at in general, with no belt and no assistance. And then I wanted to build some volume too, kind of 2 bangs for the buck. And then also he's a big guy, so I don't want to kill the shoulders, but I wanted to see something akin to a straight bar so I could kind of analyze that a little bit more. And I have a bunch of reps to do that.
Can he hold the brace for 8 reps?
He was kind of, I think he was breaking at like 4, have to rebreathe and go. And then so some of these guys inevitably across an 8 rep max, we're going to see a little technical breakdown and stuff. And then again, just using that to build some work capacity, and then also kind of figuring out what's the technical breakdown. I can almost use that to assess where the technical breakdown is going to be in the future with a 1RM, like a max effort day.
All right, scroll down. I think it's just going to lead into the next week, right?
So this guy, you'll see his core stuff was really like psoas type dominant. And that was kind of something that I saw, because all these guys will send me, send me some videos or add me on Instagram so I can kind of stalk your page. So then this will get kind of specialized when I'm thinking.
So this is week 2, right?
This should, 15s. Yep. That'll be week 2. Yep. So then it just kind of goes down 15, 12, 10, and then.
So if this is the off season, right, and this is a 4-week block, then does the same template lead into the next block generally?
Yeah. I keep the same template, and then I'll just change volume as intensity grows and gets higher. Or if we're doing a max effort, then I might, the max effort lowers get shrunk. It's like heavy squat, and then I might do a really light hinge pattern, ham curls, abs get up.
Now, what if this off season is 9 months? Are you going to stick a strength phase in there at some point? Yeah.
So then if then we'll just kind of follow. I'll throw variations in, but it'll be like traditional linear, and we'll kind of start to taper it that way. Or we might dabble in with some strongman movement, stuff like that. Or if it's, I got to increase their work capacity, we might throw some sandbag carrying in there, something like that. Or we'll just physically go 8s and then maybe 5s and 3s and taper it off like that. Or if they're in the full swing and they love the conjugate stuff, we might just run the conjugate system how we run it.
So how many mesocycles would you be comfortable running in this off-season mode?
In this I would say I would want him to start to specialize after probably 2 blocks, would be 10 weeks.
Yeah.
If it was a super long, like we're building for a quadrennial or something, I'd run 3 mesos, which would be what, 5, 10, 13, or 15, 18 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it gives a good insight on what the off season should look like.
Yeah. And it's way too short for everybody most of the time.
Well, yeah.
Like how they run it. Because but like for me, if I was like, okay, I have this dude for a real off season, it's like, we're looking at 3 cycles there, to where we want to start to notice a trend, build the trend, tax the trend, and then kind of start to ramp it towards our strength phase or something like that.
Yes. Now, during this time period, they will lose some skill acquisition of lifting the heavier weight. So there's going to be a transitional phase.
Exactly. And then it almost goes to the fighter approach, right? So then after this, we might roll them into a Mars bar box squat. kind of easy execution, but we can start moving heavier weights, and then we start to kind of specialize that, maybe Duffalo bar, and then into a straight.
Well, I think it's important for people to understand that when they're going through these phases, they're not getting weaker. They're building a stronger base, but they're
skill transition.
In a way, they are getting weaker on their 1 rep max because the skill's not going to be there and you're not peaking for it as well. This is what most lifters won't do.
That's the hard part. That's why I love having guys like this. You wish you had 100 of them, because he's just going to chew on whatever you give him. And then like after this, we might run into like a very good system that we're running, like our 3-week waves, right? So we give them a chance to acclimate. And it's like for the fighters, I'm just taxing maximal leverages. They're going to get good at their goblet squats for their secondary movement. I want maximal leverage changes for them. And then what's cool about the fighters you'll see in Danny's is it kind of goes sequentially. So we have something similar to this in a shorter capacity in a circuit for their need or for their energy system needs, but it's a learning phase, right? So it's goblet squat supersetted with maybe just some dumbbell neutral grip overhead press. We're just trying to get them to learn how to brace and how to move in space. And then we transition into more fighter specific stuff where we're doing our conjugate system, where it's their dynamic day is a total body circuit dynamic day with some French contrast thrown in there with some plyo jumps priming before their dynamic lifts. And then they hit some accessories, some back row triceps, hamstrings, core always, and then they get out. And then the next day is our circuit with our back-to-back upper and lower max effort. And we're rarely doing singles because some of them I let do singles if they have the skill.
Let's jump into Danny's. So go ahead and close this file.
But how they transition for the fighters, which is cool, is like it starts with more of a, yes, we're building hypertrophy, but we're also building skill acquisition. And then we get into more athletics type stuff, plyos, dynamic squatting, while maintaining and building that heavy effort stuff. And then what's cool about it for the fighter demographic is I break it down into, we start to go kind of what you would think of as closed chain rotational, and then we go open chain rotational, which is kind of twisting and punching.
Just click the X on the top right.
There's all kinds of cool stuff we get into with these fighters. This is my favorite demographic that I've ever picked up.
The other right. Scroll down, the X.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Actually, you need to get back to the Google Drive. Yeah, go back to.
All right. That's not what I wanted either. Oh, here we go.
This is cool seeing it up here, man. I like it.
Where'd it go?
But yeah, so the whole the fighters periodize as well, but it's a little bit different. And then it gets nuanced on my end, but then I obviously just kind of translate that down to what they need. So these guys right now are actually starting to get into their rotational phase, which is when I put in almost where we would have a realization type of a phase before the peak kind of thing.
Well, why it's not open?
Let's see if you can open it through Basecamp. So which one is that one right there?
This one?
We'll see.
Does this look like it?
Well, they have the same first sheet. Keep scrolling.
Yeah.
So scrolling down.
Yeah, keep going, keep going.
Double wedge, band peg.
Keep going down. Keep going, keep going. I think 3 more pages. All right, what's that first one? Go up.
See the hamstring curl.
This is fighter. Yep, we're in the right place.
The right one.
Yep. So, you go up so we can see that whole first one. So they always start out. We sled walk them every day. We kind of get them up on a good working weight. For Danny, that was about 1.25 plates. Go down. This is their grip accessory. Oh, this would be a great one to talk about because you had who's that monster grip guy that was on that had an amazing podcast about grip?
There was
Jay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Gave me a lot of ideas that we can talk about. Okay.
James Smith.
Yep. We start them out. So this was like their intro phase, right? So I told you we're goblet squatting. I'm teaching them all the normal patterns of how to squat. So these were high coaching days and a lot of learning. So She started out at 1 plate. I think she's at 2, handling it no problem now. Goblet squats, 4x10. Like I said, this is how.
Is there something above that, or is that where it starts?
That's where we start. We just start them on that. That kind of takes care of their warm up. They move every day, so they're pretty mobile people, except for in the upper back. And then like this 4x10, like this doesn't look like a lot, but for somebody that's never lifted weights, after sled walks, 4x10, she was shaking with a 17-pound dumbbell, knees are caving in, all this stuff. We're trying to coach her. Hey, when this caves in, you got to push it out, all that stuff. And then we always hammer the adductors because they have to open up their hips so much being a fighter, and they're always rotating off that single leg. Always hit something for the upper back. I might change a lat pull to a row, and then we go the other way, abductor machine. Always smash the hams, and then we hit the core.
All right, so the hamstrings, just scroll down.
And then you see how the core kind of changes, like standing band crunch. Simple, easy to execute, easy to teach, fast with time. I give them 100 reps. They can bang out a bunch of volume.
So this here now is a different day?
Yep, this was the different day here. So we just start them out, palms up band, pull apart. You'll see I put kind of some notes in there like, all right, she's getting killed on that micro. I don't want to completely destroy her. So then drop volume. So I might have brought her down to maybe 50 reps instead of a 1 minute AMRAP or something like that, or 30 reps, sorry. And then alternating kettlebell Z press, we're just sitting here punching like this. We get a little bit of rotational aspect out of the trunk there. Overhead marches with the bamboo, that's our stability. We got a free scap movement for those people too. They're drastically more important to have the mobility in the shoulder because that's their entire thing. And then hammer the upper back, face pulls, and then I put the hamstrings back in there too, just for maintenance.
Let's scroll down.
And then some of the stuff, hollow holds, just teaching them how to collapse the rib cage and actually feel where their abs are at. A lot of this stuff is just kind of teaching them how to feel stuff.
Click on that one, the hollow holds.
I believe this is Monkey See, Monkey. Yeah, it's a YouTube video.
Being in base camp, you may not be able to do that because you're not in Google Drive. And the third tab that says Ben Pauli Podcast Google Drive, click that. Click on Danny there. The PDF.
Oh, that was the one that didn't open.
Yeah, this one that didn't open.
That's basically we're
right,
here.
Go ahead and go back to the base.
Turn yourself into a rocking chair.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
All right, scroll down.
Same thing, sled walks, those will progress. And then I kind of just, the next day, so this one was just, we're changing leverages, but it's a squat pattern, right? Lunge pattern. So again, teaching them how to control their knee, use their hip in space. With these guys, I don't change the accessory because they don't even know how to bodybuild or anything yet. So I'm giving them multiple weeks to figure out, this is my adductor. I got to coach, brace pelvic floor instead of haphazardly pulling in. That's a huge one that because they're so open in the hip, they don't have very good pelvic floor control.
No, let's not gloss over that, right? That's an important, because a lot of people are just going to sit on there.
Exactly.
Yep. Text people, while they're doing the movement, but they're not thinking about the overall position.
Yep.
And this is with every exercise, by the way. Any exercise everybody does, they should be thinking about rooting, bracing, and how they're actually positioned during the movement. And so, especially if it's on a machine.
So the guys getting there, I'm like, suck your nuts up like you're getting a physical, brace there, hold for a 2 count, and then we're coming in, we're coming out slow. If you feel it here, that's good. Chase that contraction. You know what I mean? So we're trying to teach them how to bodybuild a little bit here.
All right, scroll down. You went too far. So that's still the same there, right? The hanging knee raises.
Yep, that was kind of the first go at a complex-ish one, and then reverse hypers, we start them body weight. Once they get to 20, we'll throw quarter. That's like a flat strap one. Throw quarters on. That's the reverse hyper is more than gold for the fighters. As soon as they get into Shark Tank, which is Circumax for them, they got multiple fresh people hitting them every 2 minutes. They rotate so much, but they're so tight in the hip and they don't have T-spine rotation where it's supposed to be. So they start compensating through the lumbar and their back takes a shit. And then all of a sudden they go to camp and they go to their fight and their low back's taking a shit. We started these guys they come in, a lot of them 4 or 5 days a week and hit that reverse hyper. I teach them how to undulate it so they're not overdoing it. Best thing that they could do. I'm like, if you have a time crunch and you need to do something, jump on that reverse hyper.
All right. So nice sled walks. Palms up, band pull apart, seated. weight as well. So there's a change of movements here.
Yeah, that's just here. Dumbbell, twist, punch, follow with your eye. So this is kind of, with these guys, I start adding rotational aspects into their program because they're so heavy rotational that we're kind of teaching them, okay, this is a press. Now we're going to move akin to your sport. We're trying to keep those pathways open, but we still want a press pattern. And then it's also great because we add that rotational aspect and it keeps their weight down. And that's the whole game for these fighters. How do we get the most bang for our buck out of each exercise? Make it the hardest we can with the lightest weight because they're already going through so much shit with their training.
All right, scroll down.
Waiter's walk, we got shoulder stability, and then we hammer the rows always. Inverted rows are a big one. We do a lot of our football bars, our American camber grip bench bar. And then you'll kind of see, we'll have a rectus type of a movement. We have a psoas, hinge dominant type of ab movement. And then we have kind of a TA type, we're bracing. I teach this to them as we want an anti-extension here. And when I started using that terminology and explaining that to them, the planks got way better. Where it's like, all right, we're rounding our back. We don't want it to open up here. And then they got the concept more so than just kind of trying to teach them to tuck the pelvis and all that.
So what's the intent then with the planks? Because if it's a side plank, and because if I have
this was plank plate slide, so you're sliding the plate under.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Because if I'm teaching somebody a plank and they're actually doing it right, 8 seconds is really hard to do.
Exactly right. So some of this is like for that. I want them to achieve the position so I know that they know how to move their spine in space, and then we'll just challenge it a little bit by adding something that they have to move and then maintain that position. So we'll start out with a regular plank that day. And so when I give these guys their circuits, I'm like, all right, this is tester round. And that's just their way to find their working weight. I'm like, start lighter than you think you need. I'll go through, we're running a circuit. I say, fix that, fix that, fix that. We're good. Time. All right. Go up or down based on what you think your 7 is after I explain that to them. And then we go again. And then maybe after 2 rounds that are kind of workup rounds, then we start our official, if we're doing 4 rounds of something. In a circuit, we'll start, all right, that's your official weight. We're going to use that for 4 sets. And then ready to go, we put them on a timer.
All right. Make that smaller. So scroll down. Is this still week 1?
This is week 1. And then I think if you go to... if you can scroll down to week 5, that would be when we transition into our circuit dynamic days and our max effort work, which is true max effort. But you'll see that's how long it takes these people for me to comfortably get them moving heavy weights. Is it's a 4-week, like twice a week practice phase. So I can start to tax them when I'm not worried about them getting hurt,
How far down was week 5?
Go back up. Keep going down. Sorry. Oh, right here. Here we go. Oh, so this was still off season for them. We separate the days. So it's total body each day, but this would be lower dominant. So then we start taxing them. So I taught them SSB box squat. The 3RM is ish. We're talking 8, 9. We're just going over mechanics, how to get the bar on your back, all that good stuff. We tax that lower half, and then we only have, I think the only upper is the lats in there. And then we might have some triceps in there. I don't know if I put it in that phase. And then some of this is also just predicated on time, right? I'm trying to fill up that hour with as much as possible. These guys they're at now where they're doubling this volume in an hour because they know what's going on. They know the setup, They know the layout of the gym, they know how to execute. It's less hand holding and teaching. You can keep going another 3 or 4 and we can get into the regular programming here. Wait, go back up, sorry. So what do we got? Okay, max effort and carry. Here we go. This is their max effort day. So what we do after the max effort day is we do some strongman style carrying circuits.
Now this is what, 5 weeks in?
This would be, this is either 5 or 10, depending on the skill of the athlete, kind of where they're at relative to a fight, relative to wrestling season, anything like that. So something like this, Z press with reverse minis, I just kind of hang. It'll be the top of the collegiate rack, but we'll have those like the spotter arms. I'll hang it there just to give them a little bit out of the bottom, and then they can kind of get that good pressing pattern. They're seated, so we're taxing the hell out of the core. We're wrenching on that upper back mobility. And then again, right here, spider bar, good morning, pause on the straps. That spider bar, good morning, if you got to teach a good morning, is the easiest one to put in, hence why they have that. Because the bar, once you hinge forward, the bar wants to pull you upright, right? So they can start to move that. And then it's cool too. You tell them, hey, that's a, whatever, 80-pound bar. And they're like, oh, that's crazy, because they thought it was 45 pounds. So they do that. And then SSB weighted jog. Oh my God, this is a horrible exercise. We set the yoke up, put the hooks on there. We got about 180 feet back behind our place. And we have the chains hanging from the short feeder straps, the blue ones you guys sell, and then we just dangle the chain. So as you're jogging, that fucker's swinging all over, and you got to stabilize everything, and you're smoked. We'll do a big group of this. We'll set it up. So scroll down a little bit so we can see the weighted jog and then the wheelbarrow carry and the plate overhead. So there's something in the realm of this every time. So they'll do kind of a loaded carry with some type of a bar where we do the weighted wheelbarrow. They run that down and back, grab a plate, push it over their head, down and back. And then we hit the hams and some rotational core and low back.
That's brutal as fuck.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
I get a lot of what the fuck you coaches at the end of that one.
Scroll. Is that it for that?
That's it for that one. And then, okay, here we go. So this is our circuit speed day stuff. So this was, we warm up the upper and the lower, and then they're sled sprinting down our turf, and then they run over, they do SSB pin squat, reverse minis, run over, do a speed deadlift. It's kind of French contrast type of the thing I threw in there. Band assisted plyo push up. We just string that across what would be like the safeties on a combo. And then we jump into our dynamic effort press. They run that.
Scroll down.
I put AR rounds. That just means auto regulate basically for time. We end up getting, I usually wave it volume wise. We'll go 4 sets week 1, 6 sets week 2, and then maybe 8 sets week 3, because they just get used to the circuit. They know what's going on. We can compound the volume, good linear progression. We don't have to eat up too much extra time.
And then where does this phase fall in their competitive season?
So we were on short time from when they started with me until her fight. So we waved this right into her fight. It worked wonders. What I would normally do is wave this into more of the, what I would say would be like the open chain rotational stuff. So we start doing some rotational stuff. Like we could do a Xerxer squat where they step off, rotate, squat, come back, switch sides. We do a lot of like full mass rotation, grab a band, row in, twist, punch, resist it on the way in, anti-rotation stuff. So we start trying to get more specific to their sport, but we're training them for strength, and then we're keeping the rest periods low and everything like that. You see the accessories after they kind of had that straight volume across the first few waves. Now we're starting to let them run it up in intensity, and we start getting them stronger. These guys, our fighters now start out with maybe 2 plates on the stack, and now they're doing adductor sets of 15 with 200 pounds.
So once they get to this point and they go through what you just explained as their competitive phase, they're not going to start back over with this, because this is from a complete beginner to get them to, say, neutral. Exactly.
So then sometimes it depends on where we're at. This is where you have to be able to plug and play, because like she won I believe it's the Thai Boxing Association Class A national title after our training here. And then she signed up to fight for a title belt in Detroit in about 3 weeks. So we had to just I was like, we sat down, what was effective? What did you feel? So what's great, I have the coach there, and he talks to me. So as soon as it was tournament style, 4 days tournament. Each fight, he's like, hey, he's sending me stuff. He's like, she looked great here. Power was through the roof. Like I said, she started with 17-pound kettlebell squats dying, and she hit at SSB, I think it was a 3-rep max at 260. Very talented athlete, this one. Works her fucking ass off. I wish I had 100 of her. So we start to be able to individualize and plug and play. We know that the stimulus from this keeps her in shape. It keeps all of her joints balanced, but that extra heavy stuff on the max effort day is really what's showcasing her power. So I'm okay with just bridging that into the next fight, and we don't have time to run physically. Now, if it was a fight, we got a year, then yeah, we'd roll her back into something else.
So it's just to get to this point here, we're looking at 15, 20 weeks.
Yeah, it's for in normal, yes.
Yes. Now, what if there's competitions that fall within that time?
So then we have to be able to plug and play and come out and transfer. So, and some of this too is based on their training as well. So that's what's great about having open lines of communication with their coach. It's like, hey, we're starting to turn these rounds up. We're focusing on conditioning here. They're running double rounds. So I know they're going to be a little bit fatigued, so I might take the carries out. And we'll focus on accessory. Or, hey, they're doing their shark take rounds. They're going to be banged up. So then some of these days, if they come limping in there, it might just be a little GPP, hit some reverse hyper, get out.
So that's going to also extend that phase though, too.
Exactly, yep.
All right, you can go ahead and close that.
So yeah, we might have to jump out. And so what I'll usually have a 2 or 3 week heads up so I can kind of phase it, you know what I mean? But it's not optimally phased, but it's just what you have to do with fighters that compete a lot. And sometimes I have one guy now that did that same tournament, and this asshole was knocking everybody out. Power was through the roof. And so they weigh you in day one. And then if you make it to the title fight on Saturday, they have a tester scale and they have a official scale, and you get one try to step on the scale. And he was cutting weight and something was going on in his brain. So he stepped on the scale. He was 2 pounds over. He's like, I'm good. I got an hour. And they're like, no, you're DQ'd. So he would have won the damn thing. He was killing everybody. But he right now in 3 weeks doesn't know if he's going to fight. So we have some of that stuff. So I'm just like, all right, we're going to train as is. And as it looks now, we're just going to be safe and deload them the week before the fight. That's just kind of how you got to be able to roll with the punches like that with those athletes, because they might just jump in a show and go.
Now, what if it's an athlete that's more seasonal, if it's football?
Yeah. So yeah, the football would be all of our normal stuff. We'd have our hypertrophy off season, building our work capacity, and then we'd be transforming strength, and then we start to get into more of the athletic stuff with our plyos and our circuits and stuff. I am a huge proponent of conditioning the football guys in the weight room with that type of stuff a lot more than how they would traditionally like peak a 1 rep max before the season, as we've talked about. Yeah. All stuff like that. But like I said, the fighters, we'd have their intro phase. And then if I have one guy that started with us when she did, but he wasn't fighting all the way till August. So now he is in his rotational type stuff like that. And so it's all circuit based. And then we're linearly increasing the work capacity to try to peak him up. And that's what's cool about this too, is that I can dive into the conditioning side of our strength and conditioning because I have an ear to what's going on with his training. I'm like, are you guys running double, triple rounds? Because they fight 3 2-minute rounds. If they're running 8, 12 rounds, I don't need just the cardio endurance is good. I want metcons and strength endurance and power endurance to be showcased there so I can start to set up my training based off of what they're doing. And that's a huge issue that we see. We see Tom from Westside runs into this and stuff a lot all the time where there's nobody communicating. So this happens a lot in MMA because they have multiple coaches. They might have a boxing coach. They might have a kickboxing coach. They might have a mobility person, a nutrition person, then a strength and conditioning coach. And you don't know who's doing what. If they're running 5-minute mountain climbers the day before they come in and their hip flexors are torched, then my job's fucked. And if I don't know what's going on, I'll just push them into the ground further into that recovery hole. You know what I mean?
So how do you go to manage? I mean, how do you manage that? Because the systemic fatigue matters.
Exactly. So that's my best thing that I knew. And so when I get these high-level fighters, I say, I need contact with your coaches. I need to know what's going on. I'm not trying to change anything they're doing. I just want the best what's for you. And then when you reach out to the higher level coaches, which Nick Bismack is their coach, awesome Muay Thai, one of the best guys I've ever seen. And he understands he's the guy that got them in. He understands what's going on. He knows where they're going. They're right on the cusp of having a whole cackle of awesome pros, and he knows that they need the strength conditioning edge to be the best at that level. So he was the one that brought them to me. So he is always going back and forth what's going on. And then the athletes know the understanding and the importance of it because I told them what they need. So they come in and I'm like, this is not no pain, no gain stuff. I'm like, you tell me exactly where you're at, not the athlete. Like, I want a bird's eye view of how you're feeling today. They're like, all right, I'm beat to shit. It's like, okay, you're off here. You're doing GPP. That's it. We're not going to sit here and do this tough guy thing. We're not doing that. We're optimal athletes now. You're not trying to be a power lifter. We're not trying to be a meathead. You're a Muay Thai fighter. If that's what you are, you're a badass wrestler, whatever it is. If you rolled your ankle on the mat, then we're going to fix the ankle and we'll aid you in your wrestling. The sport is always going to trump the strength conditioning. The strength conditioning should aid in the sport development.
Yeah. Hey guys, if you're enjoying what you're watching, make sure to take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe.
Is what I say.
And now, if we look at straining as a skill,
Yep.
right, which in our world, the meathead world, means one thing. With these athletes, how is that relative?
So it's just positional awareness and time under tension with the reps. And then as they progress in their skill and they understand it, we just slowly start to test them. Might go from an 8 rep, might be a wave, 8 rep, 5 rep, 3 rep, maybe a single.
Yeah.
And then it's always geared towards that concept we talked about. It's leverage advantages. They'll do a 4-inch block pull. And then once they learn how to strain and they know how to roll their hips through, you know how this goes, lock their knees, extend their low back, right? Once I fix that pattern, it's like, all right, let's throw a band on there. And then all of a sudden we're just contrasting. We're taxing the top half with 200 extra pounds relative to the block pull, but it's already an easy leverage because you just get your knees out of the way and stand up.
All right. So now if we take this and we apply it to the top 1%, the power lifters that need to understand that straining is a skill.
Yep.
How do you work with them to regulate their mental intensity relative to what they're actually doing? Because, for instance, you can take a weight out and it's going to feel heavy. It doesn't mean you can't lift it.
Yep.
That's one side of it. The other side is you can get so over aroused, right?
Like we both explained.
Yeah, that you fuck it up so bad that you're not able to focus. So it's how do you help them acquire the skill that, yeah, you can get overly aroused, but by the time, say it's a squat, by the time you go to pick it, you need to go from that, arousal level 12 to 10.
Yeah. Well, so some simple stuff that we've talked about before is adding pauses and adding tempos, right? So like for one of my guys, I had this freak of nature. He was a top, I believe, 30 all-time classic raw heavyweight. Got him in the gear. He totaled 3K plus in the gym going into the meet. I knew that was not realistic. So some stuff, he's violently explosive. So simple stuff, I'm like, hey, I don't sell it to him the way that I want it because I don't want him to hack what I'm trying to do. So I say, hey, we need to slow down your eccentric and we're going to do like a 4 count. And then I want you to pause in the hole. And then I just tell him, hey, we're trying to load the briefs more, whatever. And I just get him to slow down. Some of the stuff is as simple as you're not allowed to crank the metal up today on the radio. Like, you're back here, you're listening to the noises of the gym, you're listening to us breathe. I don't care what it is, no music for you. Or I start giving them cut off amount of sets. You got 5 sets because the guy will just do 10-pound chips and do 15 max effort sets because he likes just going nuts and destroying his body.
Well, it's a skill that's hard. It's hard to explain. Where, let me think of an example here for a minute. If I'm doing 3 sets of 5.
No, if I explain that completely incorrect, just tell me.
No, it's just, I'm trying to make this so people can understand. If I'm doing 3 sets of 5, obviously the load's not going to be maximal, right? And so where I'm going to put my mind is going to be for that, maybe a 6 or 7, right? And shit, I do this all the time. And then maybe on the 3rd set, I'll tell somebody that those first 2 sets kind of felt like shit.
Yep.
I'm going to really try on this one. And then I just crank it up a little bit, like an 8. And then all of a sudden it's way easier. But in my mind, I know if I would have done all 3 sets like that, my recovery would have been hindered. Thus the rest of the phase fucked up. Like there's a time, and you see what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So that's what's hard.
I ran into this when I was doing I told you about this before. I was doing 3-week waves. And I would do, I would do like a 7, an 8.5, and then a 9. But because of how much I'm hindered with my recovery and everything as I'm getting older, that 7.5 week and the 9, I had to go nuts to hit the top set. And then I would just be ruined.
Then you're fucked.
And then you're fucked. And then the first way, what would be the active deload rolling back to a 7 the next week is turning more into an 8. And then you're trying to go an RPE and a half, whatever, above that. And then it's max effort, and then it's okay, the whole program's fucked for 2 weeks.
It's like you mentally need to be 1 standard deviation above what's required to be able to do it. But the drive is you want it all to be easy.
Well, that's the issue here. I have this with my people all the time. And it's like when we get north of 80% and they're like, this feels heavy. I'm like, what do you want it to feel like? It's north of 80%. and you're a professional power lifter, basically. So like, it's going to be heavy, just like you said. Just because it's heavy doesn't mean you can't move it. And then some of it is like, focus on your form. It's going to feel heavy. That I tell them this all the time. I'm like, this is just based on arousal. If your arousal's way up here, that weight might feel heavy, and you might not get there on your opener for the meet. It might take you a second to get the juices flowing. So you just have to move it. And then there's certain, I call them like conquered weights that you have to have in your arsenal. It's like my classic raw guys, like 750 squat. That needs to be able to be executed perfectly no matter what, with no arousal whatsoever. You have to be able to understand that that is a weight that you can conquer anytime, and then we can start to dial up the dial after that one. But yeah, some of that is just, you have to coach them through it mentally. And what I find a lot with my lifters is when I put myself in the lifter perspective, I'm like, yeah, you remember when I was headbutting the fucking bar to me and then I went nowhere? I'm like, if you don't do that, you're going to get further than me. I want you to be stronger than me. That's the point of what we're doing here. So let's try to tone it back. And then what's cool too is if you have these guys that have a really high motor, you give them some feeders, let them go nuts on something that is not going to kill them. Some of this stuff is like, if I have a guy that wants to run himself into the ground, I might give him a variation on a leverage with a pause and a box or whatever that he sucks at, so he can go completely apeshit, but I know that he can't use the amount of weight that he's acclimated to.
Yeah.
So he might just get some good DOMs, but it's not full CNS, systemic fatigue, anything like that,
Mm-hmm. Were there any topics that you wanted to talk about I didn't bring up?
Why don't I give you my little Santa's gift here?
Let's see what this is.
I'm pretty excited about
I've not been able to look.
Here you go, baby.
Oh my God.
So
Look at that.
So the guy told me all this cigar jargon that I have no idea.
Yeah.
Humidistat or something is in there. Holds 75 cigars in the bottom. I know you're not a big drinker, but they got some glasses. You can put some apple juice in there or something.
This is great. Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't know. He said that I think there's a light, medium, and a dark. I don't know.
No, this is great, man.
Figure them out. If you don't like them, just tell me they suck.
No, this is good. I appreciate that. Thank you. Now, any topics that you had that I didn't bring up?
I want to send that to you. Hold on one sec. I got a bunch of them. Oh, I wanted to kind of give a shout out and kind of brag on some of my female athletes that have been killing it. I just got this was the longest war of attrition to win USS Nationals on the strongman side. And wouldn't you know it, it was a female that came out of nowhere that made exponential progress over the last 2 years. Her name's Chelsea Godet. She just won USS Nationals for me. This kind of follows a theme in the conjugate world from what I've seen from multiple coaches, including Louis, like they talked about in West Side versus the World, where the females tend to make steady, consistent progress. And this kind of links in with the last topic on the conjugate system, just because they don't have that arousal play into so much of that swinging of their weights, so they can consistently make those little 5-pound PRs. Mm-hmm. And then they're still under that rate limiter. Danny, the fighter, TBA class A champ. And then I had Jenna Adziana that you saw at the women's pro-am. She finally took down Deanna, slayed the monster. That was a great battle. Came down to the last pull for Deanna and then just beat her on the score on the Glossbrenner. But just good examples of people like Danny here, in terms of percentage gain, just outpaced the men by 5-10 times. It was nuts. And I think it has something to do with that arousal curve. They can regulate those emotions a lot better. You don't see these girls banging their head off the weights and they're very strict. They might have their female freak out if something doesn't go well, and that's something that you will learn to manage.
But that's after though.
It's after, right? It's not. And what I've seen out of a lot of these girls is when shit's going sideways. You've seen how many of our multi-ply friends have missed their first squat, and they're mentally checked out for the entire meet. And these girls are the red line it, miss 2, fuck it, let's go up to a PR, and they hit that fucker on the 3rd. You know what I mean? So that was something very cool. And then just program adherence. They follow the program a lot more. These 3 girls are kind of the testament to going all in the good way. And so Jenna is going to come squat with us tomorrow. She has world records in the squat and total for 123. Her husband, Brent Odziani, is one of my best bros, and he's coach in Coaching Revolution with me. He's my main training partner. and they have a company called Optimal Vitality. They do blood work, nutrition, and kind of lifestyle optimization, getting your ass out in the sun, going for walks, changing the light bulbs out, getting your blue light, dulled down in your house, all that good stuff. But they started running nutrition and blood work and all that stuff for my people. And Chelsea was one of those people. She lost a massive amount of weight, completely changed her body composition, and came down in weight and still hit her national title. So that's another thing that lends credence to them. Following the nutrition to a T, always going out and walking, doing their active recovery, doing their mobility. If I put something on that sheet, they do it. Jenna's awesome at helping. We can auto-regulate like crazy because she communicates so well as an athlete. For example, the bottom of her squat was feeling like shit, but we know her builders and everything. So we need some raw squat volume in. So we just take a shotgun approach and we just 6-8 sets of 8, go to failure on the last one, go completely ape shit. Threw some RPE check sets in there just to acclimate, everything like that, but everything starts flying again. So yeah, I wanted to mention them as kind of a, just kind of a tale for these lifters. Is if you can start to kind of follow some of these people and do some of that stuff, you're going to get a lot further along. And it goes into the all-in thing that we've talked about on both of the other ones we've done. This is the real all-in that you want to be. It's not, hey, I'll take 6 bottles of fucking Tren and do whatever I need to do on that. That's not what it is. Very good home life. Everything's great with these people. And they reach that point of peace where they can actually focus like you think you're focusing when you're coming up as a meathead, and you're not really focusing until if this whole section is good, ironed out, and there's no chaos there, then I can focus on the chaos of the weights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that. I think we covered a lot of these specialty bars. Good. I got a shout battle ready. They picked me up. I got my new camo. I tried to call it a camo horsecock or something weird. They didn't allow that. They picked me up after I think 2 or 3 meets ago, outfitted me with all kinds of good stuff. Awesome team. Ted and Bobby Joe over there, those guys. Great circle of people, some monster benchers in there. They're making some awesome strides in the technology of the band shirts, and just in material. Ted's a goddamn wizard. They got awesome alteration guy.
How do you resist the urge to try new shit all the time?
Well, what's great, the way that Ted does it is it's new, but it's variants off of the old. So it's easy to get into that next thing. And then just for me, that was trial and error over the years, jumping shirts all the time. So like some of my original shirt that he gave me, I still bench in that and warm up in that and all that stuff. And, just because I like the groove, but it's just learning that if you learn the piece of equipment, it's going to be better than thinking you're going to just get 100 pounds from something new. And so, yeah, they like the first pair of knee wraps he sent me, I just still squat on those because I've broken them in. And what's even better, like about the technology with the rubber relative to the whatever it is, cotton or whatever is in there, is as we break in, we get more into that elastic property of the rubber. So the reps work better over time.
Well, I think a piece of what you just said is you have to learn the equipment, not find the equipment that learns you.
Exactly.
Right. And that
was like Hoff said, he had 2 shirts on his way to 3K or something.
Yeah. Completely nuts.
And then the grip thing. So, those guys grip monsters. But what was hilarious, I'm watching the podcast, like I'm good in the space about like breaking stuff down, translating it, and you were asking the one guy about like, what do? You were trying to get it out of him, but he didn't he's one of like, some of these people are just so good at what they do and they've been immersed in it so long, they can't break it down to where the beginner level is anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to throw shade at these guys.
No, we do the same thing though.
Grips we do the same thing. Like we were talking about like auto regulation last time, like we're just complicating it too much. Right. So like I put in, this works wonders for the grip work for my strongmen. It's crazy for my wrestlers, that wrist hold. And you know how this was wrestling guys that have a good grip. If they latch onto that wrist, they're just a motherfucker to deal with, right? So what we found is I started to break this down. I started noticing, the first notice I noticed was a variance in grip power from people that had really tight traps. Is they could hold on to something one day, and then they'd be complaining about their trap being tight, and then they would drop whatever that weight was. Maybe it's a deadlift in their mixed grip or something. So I started looking at this, and I started breaking down the nerves, and I knew a bunch about nerve entrapments from dealing with my low back and sciatica issues and kind of nerve flossing my way back healthy. And I was looking at this, and I'm like, oh, well, if we're upper trap dominant and we're locking this C-spine in place and we have all this neck compression that we have to get adjusted out all the time and everything, I'm like, when we would see these guys, we would mobilize their traps or smash the traps out, we would see an increase in grip power. So I started looking at this, and I started to realize that we're jammed up in these nerve channels going from deep neck, trap, down through the shoulder, arm, probably bicep. I mean, most of us that have tried to front squat as a heavy meathead feel that ulnar nerve floss that you get that's excruciatingly painful.
Or they can't do a barbell curl.
Or they can't do a barbell curl to supinate, right? So that was kind of what you guys were talking about in there, where like you were trying to get to that point of like we're opening that up, right? So not only are we just opening up that range of motion, but we're opening up the nerve channel. What people understand about kind of nerve entrapments is that when muscles aren't optimally like contracting and relaxing, we start to get muscle adhesions, those knots, right? And then when those are adhesed near a nerve, the nerve doesn't work right. So then we start to dissipate from the central power source down to the periphery, and then we see a grip issue, right? So what I started to do is, I don't know if we could pull up, I have the grip accessory sheet on there, and we got to talk about it as we go through. It'll be right in the beginning of either of those programs. So you can scroll all the way up to the top. It'll be right near the top there, and then go down maybe 2 or 3. It'll have all the hyperlinks. But this is the whole concept of how we attack grip, and I'll explain. It wasn't even a disagreement. I was just going to put together what those guys were saying they were doing after they said they didn't do it. They just didn't know they were doing it. So keep going. It'll say grip accessory on the top. I think it's 1 more, 2 more. Down. Keep going. Next page, I think. It's too many damn sheets. Keep going. Right there, grip accessory. Okay, so what I started to see was similar to power leaks in a core or from a hip, and I just realized it was about balance, right? So everybody has kind of like our big shirted benches. We ran into that where the grip sucks. We got the forearm tendonitis, and it's like open the hand up, do some wrist extension, and then we free some stuff up, right? All we're doing is balancing out the joints, so then we can have those nerve channels freed up to actually grip how we're supposed to grip. And so what I do with these guys is get this in whenever you can, twice a week.
Right, click on the digit extension.
So these are like, that's just finger bands. Get them on Amazon for like $3. Extend the fingers or use rubber bands, all that stuff. I don't know if we can even open.
I don't know why it's not looking. Just try this.
But so the whole concept behind the grip accessory, now this is in before the actual grip work, which is basically akin in a similar fashion. It's that digit extension, right? This is all in, and we balance wrist and forearm out like that. That's just on that sheet, and that's kind of attacking wrist. So we have pronation, supination, deviation, finger extension, wrist extension, all of the stuff. We have wrist flexion, but we limit that for the guys that have super tight forearms because we're always grabbing barbells or wrists for a wrestler, stuff like that.
Go back to the PDF.
So what I found out is if we prelude the grip training with this and they're balanced out, they fly exponentially faster.
All right, dumbbell wrist extension.
Click on the light.
Yeah, you probably have to copy it again.
I think you might have got the set and rep in there too. We'll see. Oh, no, we're good.
That's the one we just saw.
Maybe do I got to mess up like in there? Should be all right. But
I'll try it again.
The whole theory was we're going to open up this whole nerve channel. So we start working their T-spine mobility and we start dropping the scap in there. And then we
go to the
kettlebell.
Shoulder. Let's try the kettlebell one next.
And what we see is it kind of it sets up the grip training a lot more. And then I have a cool way that I lay out the grip training, which is similar to, I guess how they would train for their events just by having the variety of events, right? So as the one guy said, he broke the grip down into like pinch, hold, crush. And that's kind of, so I started consulting with some of these grip guys, and I'm like, okay, how do you guys build it? And they said, we have this in. And I knew that there was some utility in that, just having the variance and different styles of grip. So I started to put that in, right? So we'll run this, and I'll just kind of let them put it in until they tell me they have an increase in grip, and then we'll put actual grip training in. And then we just undulate it basically, or conjugate it kind of how we would, right? So we'll do a hold, it might be an axle, pull it off a pin, hold for 5 count. We have 5 count or 10 count, we'll have a max there. And then we'll do a pinch where it's maybe we'll pinch some bumper plates and hold for time. And then we might have a crush. We have the crushers. We mess with that. We started doing more crush with like an axle bar where we're just kind of digging into that implement and holding that stuff. And then, then the holds would be like a farmer's hold. We might pick it. So some of the stuff like wear and tear, I put it on 4 or 5 inch blocks. So we just pick a 2-inch farmer's pick, easy there, and then it's death on the hands. And then so that added in with freeing up those nerve channels seems to be kind of what they were getting to, where he asked him if they did accessory, and down the road, he's like, yeah, I'll do the finger extensions and then roll the wrist and stuff. It's the exact same thing that we're doing. It was just, he kind of stumbled across it in a little bit different way.
Well, I can see it in a different context though, because if what we're doing is predominantly always this, to the greatest extreme.
Yep. That's
right.
That's how I can.
Which is going to be more, for the extension isn't going to be in there to where we got a sand bucket.
Yep.
So what people will miss on the sand bucket is they'll do that, right? But they don't focus on that.
Yeah, they won't roll their, some of these guys, I'm like, they can't even open their hand. They can't put their palm on the, you know what I mean? They're like stuck. I mean, our powerlifter heavyweights with the fat fingers, and then their hands are swollen. They're taking some growth or something. Their hand doesn't even work.
Yeah.
And they can't extend the fingers. They can't extend the wrist. The deviation's a huge one, and then the pronation, supination. I know now there's a couple of things in there that like he was saying were like gimmicking and stuff, like the kettlebell flips. Yeah, they're doing 20s. So we're not anywhere near something that would injure an elbow or anything. I just want pronation, supination, and they also will have wide grip barbell curl on one day. And then on the secondary day, they have incline bench, dumbbell, full extended curls. I don't want tension in the bicep. I don't care about your bicep. I care about the distal bicep tendon and the full range of motion at the elbow. So we have that freed up nerve channel for a fighter to build their grip, or a wrestler to build their grip, or my power lifters, so we don't start dumping these shoulders into anterior or protraction here and holding that shoulder hostage or something.
And when I was really geeked into this shit, I'd have rice, sand, steel shot, right? Because it's different degrees, how hard it is. And because a lot of those things you can do within that, the gripping, the external, you can't do, the kettlebell, type thing. But the distraction's another big thing though, too.
Yep.
You got a band distraction that's pulling your arm down, to open that all up.
Well, it's little, because I started to notice, like you saw, like Dan Tinajero does one with a band across the power rack, and he just does this, rotates and stuff. And I set it low one day, and I noticed it was pulling my shoulder down, and then I was like, oh, I could free up an extra 10 reps. What was that about? And then I was like, oh, it's a nerve chain here. So I kind of just started to break it down. I'm like, how are we training this? We were only training the main exercise. Imagine trying to build a squat, just squatting, right? We're going to run into some issues. That's what we're running into. We're running into, tendonitis feeling, carpal tunnel feeling, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, we're not breaking this down the right way, how we're building our normal list. So I'm like, we should have accessory in here. Even if it's not like hypertrophy, we're building anything, it's just to balance out that joint. And I'm like, I know that was one of my first things that I realized in this space was the importance of balance at the joint to centrate stuff, or even balance at a hinge joint to hinge properly. Or if I'm flexing this way, to have stability at the wrist and I don't have any joint glide or anything like that. So I started looking at it like that. And this was like, all right, so we have this accessory in, and then we have a, we had the system. So I kind of made a grid, and they would follow the grid. So it would be repetition, pinch. So they might do pinch, pick up, something like that, repetition, pinch. And then we would do max effort, hold. So like the little rotation thing, the heavy one, the roller. That would be for a max. And then we would do a long hold. So they might pick up a farmer's for time, or they would do a crush for time, something like that. Maybe the crushers for a minute at a certain weight, something like that. And so I would just try to undulate. And then the next wave through, it would change. If you did the rep, you do the max, or you do the long hold, and then it rotate like that.
What did you see after implementing that in over a period of time?
We saw progress to the effect that, like my strongmen, for instance, at nationals here, their grip, in that it's a grip event, it wasn't even, that wasn't the factor that limited their performance. It was the actual trunk stability of the carry. So then it was cool because now I know, okay, well, I just need some overload carries in there so we can add straps. Because I used to be like, why are these people using straps for a frame carry? And then you realize when the grip gets to a high level, that's not the limiting factor. It's kind of almost how we do, hey, you know, your back's real strong and your deadlift's strong. We don't want to limit it with the grip all the time. We want to train that capacity. So it's stuff like that where it got to a point where we started seeing health up the chain of the power lifters and stuff like that. We started seeing the grip go through the roof. Less, you know, we have the radial and median nerve entrapment where these three fingers go numb, or median nerve entrapment. All that stuff started to go away, but it was just very good progress all around. And then also just the health benefit of it, which is what I liked.
Any decrease in bicep tendonitis or the shoulder tendonitis?
Now, so we have none of this, hey, my anterior delt hurts, but it's the bicep tendon. That's almost gone. We rarely are hearing, hey, my elbow feels like it's in a vice, like you hear these people getting squeezed. And then that is coupled with some of the behind the neck stuff. And so now it's like some of these big guys now, we don't even have we could squat them with a straight bar every week and they don't have any issues that the big guys have had for years. And it's just because I'm just trying to balance and free up those areas so we're not fighting our own body like the hamstring and the deadlift.
Yeah. Any other things you wanted to talk about?
I don't want to overdo it like we did last time. So we'll just, let me see. Oh, you might have some good stories on this one. Different characters, players, or roles in a crew.
Ha. Ha.
I brought this up because now I got all the fighters, and they're just inherently amazing shit talkers because they're fighters. And now they're starting to battle it out on Max Effort Day and talk shit, and it's amazing. I love it.
Optimally, you would have the ultimate helper, like the person that's probably not the strongest by any means, but is great at like wrapping people, setting shirts, you know, all that kind of shit. You know, I
feel like it's like a video game because when we talk about this, you can kind of picture that guy in your crew. And
it fits that role perfectly because they don't miss things.
Yep.
Like they won't miss if a bar's uneven on your back. They won't miss if something's misloaded. They won't miss if a chain is off on one side.
They're great at calculating gloss Brenner.
Yeah, they're just, and it's a huge role.
Oh yeah.
Right. Where
that'll win you or lose your meat.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a giant role. Then you got to have the fucking maniac, right? The one that's basically like, we tell people not to be.
Yep.
But that sets the ceiling for balls.
Yep.
You know, just like fucking balls of steel where you know the outcome's not going to be good years down the line.
What sets the energy tone kind of for the whole group.
And fuck, they know it too.
Yep.
You know, and they don't care. You know, so yeah, that takes care of that. That takes care of that. Then in the middle, you just need people that care, people that give a shit.
Yep.
You know, I can't think of any others outside of all that. You know, it becomes more of
deviation
it just becomes more of observation.
Mm-hmm.
Like people can be doing different things, but if somebody needs a spot, you should kind of intuitively know, like they're ready. Let's migrate over there and spot them. You know, it shouldn't be a situation where you're like, hey, you know, can somebody come spot? Like they'll know just because of where you're standing or whatever it's going to be.
Yep.
And that happens more if you have multiple monoliths and multiple benches kind of going on at one period of time.
Okay.
I guess it would be everybody has spatial awareness.
Yep.
You know, they know
don't stand in front of the mono.
Yeah. I mean, just don't stand in front of the mono. Is somebody doing something that could potentially fucking hurt themselves, but they don't know it? So you kind of know what's going on with everybody. Like you do this as the coach, right? Mm-hmm. And at a micro level, they need to be able to do that at a lesser degree, but just know what's going on. Because when they know that, then that energy, you can feed off everybody.
It's kind of a reciprocal feeding because you get the energy from the one guy, you get the technical feedback, eyes in the sky, math guy.
Yeah, I mean, think of playing football and you're in a locker room before a game.
Yep.
You know, one person starts, the adrenaline rush,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden everybody has it. It's like contagious. And
It's better than a locker room in a way too, because we don't see as much of the negative and the cancerous attitude in this space, just because it's a fun thing to do for everybody.
Yeah, well, that's the hard part, is to keep all that out.
Yep, it is.
Right, and it's possible. It's definitely possible. Plain ignorance is great.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody brings up, you have no idea what's going on. Actually, it's probably better just to not have any idea what's going on.
Yes.
Right, because you can't control any of it, and it allows them to focus more on themselves. It comes in waves, but I don't know if there's a specific. That's the person you don't want. Is the person that's going to bring all the shit in.
Yep. Well,
right?
that's exactly. Yeah, you don't even put them in the group.
That's what you don't want, right? Or if it starts to emerge, you squash it.
Mm-hmm. We've done the same thing at our gym. As soon as it goes, we have an awesome reputation at our place, because it's just, there's none of that. It's just we don't have. We had one incident, one guy pushed another guy, and then they're both gone.
Yeah,
there's no 3 strike, no nothing. It's like you can't upset this delicate balance of this beautiful animal we made, because there's no bullshit in there.
Yeah. What do you think the characters are?
No, I think it's just a deviation off of that. You have like the math wizard plate guy. You have the guy that knows every. Some of them, you have the shit talk guy, the master shit talker in the group. You have, we call him the chip daddy, the guy that always beats everybody by like 1 pound. He'll get the fucking little 0.25 kilos out. We get some of that, or we get some guy that'll cheat a rep just to win, stuff like that. I love all those characters, man. It reminds me you're picking characters in a video game, but it's just awesome, man. Some of these days I sit back, I had, before I went down to Disney with the family, I had a just 3:30 a.m. to 9 o'clock type of a day. And it's one of those days I got done, I was just beat, my feet were like bleeding because I wore shoes. I never wear shoes. I'm like a caveman like that. And I was driving home, and I was like, man, I fucking love this shit. Like it was just awesome. And I was talking to Steve on the way out. He's like, that was a long ass day, but it was a great day, Phil. I had beginner people in the beginning of the day. I got my lift in with my morning crew. I had some fighters in, and then I went home, had lunch with the kids and the family, went right back. I had some beginner level wrestler kids, and I had the pro fighter group. And then we had the evening guys, classic raw, strongman, everybody was going off. And then I got to do some one-on-one deep thinking coaching, stuff like that. It was a great day, man. I just was so thankful to have that.
No, that's a weird thing that plays into like the work-life balance of a coach.
Yep.
Where, you're working 70, maybe even 80 hours a week, but you love it.
Yeah. Right.
But some people will criticize it, and I've never got that. So if you're doing something that you love, I mean, if you fucking love it and that's what you're doing, and you spend 70 hours doing it or whatever it is, then what's the alternative? You only spend 40 hours doing it, and then you spend the other 30 hours doing shit you don't like. I don't.
It makes so much sense to people like us, and then the counter to that would make no sense. I don't know what I would even do with my time. And then and then for a lot of people like us, like it just doesn't shut off. Like if I'm at home and it's like, all right, I got a couple minutes, like I'm watching this podcast or I'm reading some stuff like that. It's just, you dive all in, man. With like, I keep thinking, I'm like when, I don't know when I know that I'm going to be done, or if I'm ever going to be done, because that fire is still there. Like if I think about going and hitting that max effort PR, or like sitting there for USS Nationals, I was glued to my YouTube on the live stream, watching it all day, and just I couldn't get enough of it and stuff like that. Like that's just, sometimes I wish it would just go away because it gets so daunting. But I'm like, man, it's still there. And I always like, as you get older, you start to question that.
Well, if it's your business and it's your livelihood, right, then there's no way it's going to get done in 30, 40 hours a week.
Yeah, you have too many ideas. I can't even imagine you with all this stuff. Like,
it's impossible.
How could you shut that off? There's too many things.
It's impossible. Just because the admin part of it's going to take 20, 30 hours. Yeah. Then there's all the other stuff that goes on top of all that. And there's nothing wrong with, people that want that 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, there's a lot of times I wish the fuck I had that.
Yeah, like, can I just get a normal
check out and go do
weekend
something,
off? Yeah.
you know, and do something like that. But that's not what being an entrepreneur or having your own business is. You know, if that's the choice that you make, but people will criticize people that have their own businesses because of all that. And it's like, well, they have to do that.
Yeah.
They have to, or they're not going to have a business.
Yep.
You know, it's just that simple.
There's a new problem every day, every hour of the day.
Oh God, yeah, all the time, you know, and it's just part of all that. But it drives me fucking crazy when people will, you know, say, well, you know, the 40-hour, and for the people that work for people, that's fine. That's, you know, that's there's roles for that have to be done. I mean, you can't expect employees to work 80 hours a week, stuff like that, unless it's a startup. You know, if it's a startup, then fucking everybody's working like that. But that's one of the things that drives me fucking crazy is when I'll talk to other business owners and like, this shit takes way too long. I'm like, you shouldn't do this.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was just going to add is like the other people that don't want to go. Some of these days it takes everything in me with these lifters or some people that I've had in some of my businesses online and stuff with me is I'm like, you are already have your foot in the door and you have a chance to do something. What the fuck is wrong with you? How do you not get motivated to do this? How has this become a job for you?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. I have some of these lifters. I'm like, how do you not take them an hour and a half to work up to a 5-rep max that's 200 pounds below what I know they can do? And I'm like, you are like, there's no time here. This is such a finite space. We don't like every old motherfucker sits there and tells you they wish they would have did more with their time. So why would you not take that lesson and try to do everything you could do?
It could just simply be it's not for them.
And that's fine.
And they should find something else.
Exactly. I'm like, if this isn't it, but like, just put that type of energy into whatever the fuck it is, man. Like, you just owe it to yourself. It's so nuts to me how these guys just kind of just zombie through life.
Yeah.
Now, one more question. Okay. So I want to know, one day that you left, whether it be West Side before or after, what was the day that you think of as that was my best day in the gym ever, or that was when I was the strongest? I was a motherfucker that day.
One that popped into my head was, it was probably more recent than not, is I wanted to squat. It was after both hip replacements, I believe, 800 high box spider bar squat, and had a whole lot of time trying to put into it, and it was just going nowhere for forever. And JL did this RPR shit on me, and there are multiple things, but what it really ended up doing is I learned how to brace for my body weight and structure at that time, because that changes.
Yeah.
Bigger you get, smaller you get, it changes. And I hit like a fucking 100-pound PR that day, and out of the blue. It's like this is even not something I should be attempting.
That'll stoke the
until
fire nice for you.
until like 6 months from now.
Yeah.
But it just fucking felt good, and that was like, fuck, this is crazy. Multiple things happened at that time. It's like, this is fucking crazy. Why in the fuck did I not know how to do this 15 years ago?
You probably taught it to 1 million people.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's why it hits me so fucking hard, because had I known that when I needed to know it, because I really didn't need to know it at that point in time. I'm already fucking washed up and doing stupid shit. That kind of rings. I mean, all the other ones are just kind of like a blur, you know, of all of them. I mean, there's nothing that worries. It's just all hard, you know, training. I mean, some days are better than other days.
Those are my days like that are always from the hardest workouts. It's not.
Oh yeah, most
it's
definitely.
Not the PRs. It's the ones where I'm like, I look back, I'm like, dude, you were a fucking savage that day. That was fucking nutty.
There was a fucking time when I was in high school, and we were at the YMCA, and we were doing the stupidest fucking thing. We were put a flat bench on the floor, sit on the ground, got a cable in front of you, and you're just fucking doing curls, right? And we wanted to see if we could do it for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was like working up the rack, working up the stack, working down the stack, and
Yeah, just as you go failure, yeah.
for 45 fucking minutes.
Yeah.
And stupid shit like that, which is dumb because it served no purpose. It really didn't.
Well, the point is it's never like that PR that you hit. You know what I mean? It's always something, or it's like those days that I just had. It's like that was my best day as a coach. Just because it wasn't because I won a national title or whatever. It was just one good quality, all-encompassing day.
Well, it's usually something you had to overcome that you didn't think you could do.
Yep.
Right. Or adversity that you had to overcome. Mm-hmm. There's other ones where I tell people sometimes the hardest number to hit is 135, a plate on each side of the bar. And unless you've torn something off, had surgery, or, had a life-threatening illness or something like that to have to come back from.
Until you ran a wave to be able to hit that at the peak.
Yeah, you don't understand how, because you don't know. You know what I'm saying? If something's really, really fucked up or tore off, you don't know if you can ever really come. There's always that doubt.
I was like, oh, okay, I'm at 225 for the rest of my life on this pec.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, shit, no, we're not. You just got to get through that shit.
In the bar, a PVC pipe hurts.
Yep.
Everything hurts.
Reverse span bamboo bar.
Oh yeah, all that shit. But that day you do 135, then it's like, okay, if I just did 135, then I know I can do 155.
That's what it is.
If I can do 155, I can do 165. Then it builds all back. But it's that first one, that's like, fuck, man, is this going to feel right ever again?
Yep.
Because you tore your tricep, it doesn't feel right.
Never going to feel the same.
Right. But when 135 feels like the bench is supposed to feel, that's like, but that's the hardest place to get
That
to.
is. That was one of my lifters, tore her ACL off of Jenna, and she failed a 700-pound squat, which was going to be the greatest coefficient squat of all time. But I told her, I go, that was the best squat ever, because now you're back. You failed with your knees in perfect position at the bottom of the squat, and that can handle the heaviest squat you've ever landed or you've ever attempted. So now you're good. Now we're off to the races.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I want to thank you for coming out. How can people find you?
Coach_P_strength on Instagram. I don't ever list my phone number. Don't ever call me. I would like to plug my promo here. So I just opened up an exercise library. I'm sharing all the secrets of the iron for a low cost of $3.99 a month. It's not an OnlyFans. I have a promo code that goes from now to July 6th. The link is in my bio, exercise library on Instagram, all caps, Table Talk 20, all caps. It will give $10 off the annual subscription. I think it goes from $45 to $35 for a year. This thing, what I wanted to do is just pack it full of this information that I feel is wildly overpriced now with how people do things. And all it was me trekking a journey and experimenting and having the pleasure of coaching all these lifters. So I wanted to pump it out there. We have all kinds of stuff. We have strategies. We have table talk-esque type in-depth discussions. We have mobility, activation, all that stuff. And it is ever expanding. We have videos uploading all the time. And then also you can DM me here or at the Coaching Revolution Instagram and request something on there. And I accept feedback. If you're like, hey, I can't find this, or it took me forever, I accept the feedback. But that's one thing that I'm really excited about. We launched it 2 days ago.
Okay. I'm going to add an asterisk here because I don't know when this is going to post. So is that 3 weeks after today?
Oh shit! So I'll backdate that then. So I'll don't worry about
how long are you going to leave it open for.
We'll leave it open for probably a month after this.
Okay, so it'll be a month afterwards.
Yeah,
okay,
I forgot about that.
Yep. All right. So thank you for coming out, and we're done.
Thank you, Dave. It's been an honor, brother.
All content you see on this channel and at elitefts.com is created by, take a guess, Elite FTS. If you want to help support the content, head over to elitefts.com and pick up literally anything that you need to be able to get more jacked and strong.